It must be one of the most amazing flying stories of all time. One that is still hard to believe. An airliner full of passengers out of control at 17,000 feet. And the pilot is stuck outside the plane. In the cockpit, 3 frightened flight attendants are clinging to his legs. If he slips from their grasp, the captain's body could be sucked into the engine and bring down the plane. At the controls, a young co-pilot is battling to get the plane to the nearest airport.
Mayday! 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 London, Sweden 5390!
The lives of 87 passengers and crew hang by a thread.
A lot of people go through life thinking it'll never happen to me. But you tend to go through life thinking it can.
I said I thought I was going to die, Mother. I thought we were going to die.
This bizarre accident tested the limits of human survival. And the investigation that followed not only exposed the mistakes behind it, but led to new ways of preventing them. For the crew of the British Airways flight from Birmingham, England to Malaga, Spain, the 10th of June began like any other day. Old friends about to do a job they loved.
Yeah, God, I can't remember that though.
Yeah, but I'm not doing it.
Stewards Nigel Ogden and Simon Rogers, along with stewardess Sue Prince, had worked together on and off for years.
Anyway.
They're an experienced, capable team that takes pride in its work.
At Birmingham, all the cabin crew and all the pilots, they all knew each other. We're all on first-name terms. Simon was a good friend of mine anyway, because we, you know, just go out for a beer or a curry or whatever like that. Everybody was friendly to everybody else.
The one new member of the group was Alistair Atchison, an experienced co-pilot he'd just driven down from Manchester that morning.
Did you get into anything special?
Morning, Alistair. Come on in.
Tim Lancaster is captain. He's been a commercial pilot for 21 years.
Well, we've got to get started, eh?
Chief Steward John Heward arrives to give the crew their final briefing.
Morning, everyone. Right. Is that the first officer?
Yeah, just down from Manchester.
Nice seeing your face. OK. Malaga. Right, looking forward to this. Right, Nige, you can sit up with me up front and talk rugby. Sue, where would you like?
Over the wing?
OK, so, Simon, you're at the rear. All right, now, just a few safety questions. Nigel.
Before takeoff, the co-pilot performs a walk-around, checking the outside of the aircraft for anything wrong. In the cockpit, Captain Tim Lancaster reviews a log of the maintenance carried out on the plane the day before.
Everything okay? Fine. She's just come out of maintenance by the look of it. Hardly much, though. Just changed the windscreen.
Many of the passengers know the flight well and are looking forward to a relaxed trip to Spain.
I was going to catch a plane from Birmingham to Malaga to meet my mum. My sister and I were joining her there for a week's holiday, a girls' week.
I live in the south of Spain, and 2 or 3 times a year I come back to see my grandchildren and also my mother. Everyone lives near Birmingham, so that's the route I normally take, Malaga, Birmingham.
These unsuspecting passengers and crew were about to begin an adventure of a lifetime.
Seem to have made yourself comfortable.
Too right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. My name is Tim Lancaster. Welcome aboard this British Airways flight to Malaga. Unfortunately,
He seemed laid back and quite jovial, really. You know, sort of well, it's a lovely day in Malaga, blue skies, sunshine. Sit back and enjoy the flight.
Sunny, and we still expect to get you there on time. Birmingham Tower, Speedbird 5390. We're ready to start and push.
Speedbird 5390. Clear to start and push. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to take you through our
Safety procedures and equipment. As this information is for your benefit, we ask you to watch and listen carefully.
Clear to start engines.
Starting number 2.
Emergency exits are on both sides.
The
of
stewardess and shows you the emergency exit and all the emergency gear. And, of course, nobody's really watching. One chap was quite blasé, he was reading the Times, and people weren't really bothering because we've all been on flights and, you know, it's no big deal.
The air can be topped up by using the mouthpiece, and there is a whistle for attracting attention.
knots.
The BAC 111 was known as the Jeep of the skies, a workhorse that was easy to maintain and had a good safety record. At 43 tons, this pressurized hull is carrying 81 passengers and 6 crew, and is now climbing to 23,000 feet. In just over 2 hours, they should be in Spain. Only a catastrophic accident could bring this plane out of the skies.
Alistair, I can see my house from here.
2 minutes into the climb, the pilots switch on the autopilot. Tim Lancaster takes off his shoulder straps and relaxes into the flight.
Now I went into the flight deck to ask Tim and Alistair what they would like to drink.
You gentlemen like a tea?
Please, the usual.
Milk, 1 sugar, please.
And I said, your breakfast's on. It'll only be a few minutes.
Now, almost 13 minutes after takeoff, and at 17,300 feet, they're just 5,000 feet from their assigned altitude. But then, in a split second, everything changes. With a huge explosion, the captain's windscreen blows out into the sky. Almost immediately, a white fog forms.
A sort of really intense stomach, body-shaking thud.
We were just diving, really. And then we started to judder like this.
And I was a bit stunned. I thought, what? I thought, oh God, it's a bomb.
Alistair, the co-pilot, is suddenly fighting for control in a 350-mile-an-hour wind. There's no time to think about the captain, who's been blasted out of the window by pressurized air escaping from the aircraft. The rushing wind pins Captain Lancaster to the roof of the cockpit. Inside, his legs have jammed the control column forward, disconnecting the autopilot and pushing the plane down into a dive. Alistair Acheson needs all his flying experience now. He's on his own. The captain's body is pinned to the outside of the jet as it hurtles down from 17,000 feet. The throttles are jammed forward, increasing the speed to nearly 400 miles an hour. Co-pilot Alistair Acheson has to take command. While he fights to bring the plane under control, steward Nigel Ogden can see his captain is being sucked out of the aircraft.
And I looked in, the flight deck door was resting on the controls, and all I could see was Tim out the window. I jumped over, put one foot in the captain's footwell, and the other one was down the side of his seat. I just grabbed him before he went out completely.
Nigel Ogden holds on to the captain for dear life. Outside, a 390-mile-an-hour blast of wind at minus 17 degrees centigrade smashes into Tim Lancaster's body. The tornado in the cockpit is giving Acheson major problems. Air traffic control can hear his cries for help, but the storm rushing through the cockpit drowns out their replies. The captain's feet are still pushing against the control column, and Alistair is struggling to get full control of the plane. He's now diving through some of the busiest air lanes in the world, with the added danger of a mid-air collision. From the cabin, lead steward John Heward sees the chaos in the cockpit and does what he can to help.
I looked up, and there was Nigel sort of hanging across the seat in the flight deck. In front of me, the flight deck door had fallen forwards and trapped itself between the actual door frame and the throttles of the aircraft. So I literally stamped on it twice, and it literally broke into 3 or 4 pieces. Behind, on the wall of the flight deck, there is a spare seat for anybody to observe the flight or whatever. And I thought, well, if I put my arm through the seatbelt there, I can grab both of them, and at least we've got some sort of anchor point inside the aircraft.
Alistair, who's never flown with this crew before, has to leave them to their own devices and focus on getting the plane to safety. He now has control of the throttles. John and Nigel have wrenched the captain's feet away from the control column. But instead of slowing down, Acheson decides to continue the rapid descent. It will quickly take him out of the way of any other air traffic and take him to a lower altitude where oxygen equipment won't be needed. Staying too long at a high altitude risks oxygen starvation, and this older aircraft is not fully equipped with oxygen for all the passengers on board. The airspeed indicator goes into the red. In the cabin, the 2 other stewards, Sue Prince and Simon Rogers, are trying to prepare the passengers for what they hope will, at worst, be an emergency landing. They've dived to 11,000 feet in just 2.5 minutes. But as they level out and slow down to 170 miles per hour, the captain's body is no longer pinned to the roof and slides round to the side of the plane.
Flight level 100. Radar heading 195.
Working his way from the back of the cabin, steward Simon Rogers now catches sight of the chaos in the cockpit for the first time.
Now the aircraft had got to sort of flying fairly level, Simon came up from the back. Nigel was beginning to get really sort of achy now with his arms, and I knew he wasn't going to let go unless he was sure that Tim wouldn't fly out of the window.
We all had fear in our eyes. We were all worried sick because we thought, you know, either Tim's going to die or we're going to die, you know. That was going through my mind. But it was up to Alistair then, and it was up to us 3, Simon and John and myself, to hold on to grim death.
Mayday, mayday, mayday,
All I remember is Tim's arms flailing out. His arms seemed about 6 foot long. And I'll never forget that. His eyes were wide open. I mean, his face was hitting the side of the side screen, but he didn't blink. And I thought to myself, and I said to John, I said, I think he's dead. I think he's dead. And I said, you and Sil have to hold on. I can't hold on anymore. I can't hold on anymore. I've lost the feeling in my arms.
We decided to put Simon. I said to Simon, you sit in that jump seat and fasten yourself in. With Simon sitting in the seat, we'd freed Tim's legs from between the control column and the seat. So we hooked his feet over the back of the captain's seat, and then Simon literally put his hands on the top, just so he was holding his ankles down.
Hey, look, what's going on? We're gonna be all right. But I think the captain's dead.
Well, I couldn't believe it, because he just told us what a lovely day it was. You know, blue skies, sunshine, relax and enjoy the flight. And then next minute, he's dead.
Simon and Alistair now face one of their most difficult decisions: what to do with the lifeless body of the captain. No words are said, but for a moment the thought passes between them that the best thing would simply be to let it go.
No! Can you hold on to it, please?
But Alistair's order isn't simply an act of compassion.
Releasing the body at the position it was in, it would have gone close to the upper area of the wing. It could have damaged the leading edge of the wing. Had it gone over the wing, it could very well have gone into the engine. Quite a lot of damage could have been caused by the release of the body. So I think it was a very sensible decision to try and keep him where he was.
Alistair has managed to get down to 11,000 feet. Without the captain to help, he's operating the plane's systems from memory and shepherding it around Heathrow, some of the most congested airspace in the world. 7 minutes out of contact with the ground, he's able to hear the voice of air traffic control for the first time.
Requesting radar assistance onto the nearest airfield, please.
Speedbird 5390, roger. Can you accept landing at Southampton?
Speedbird 5390, I am familiar with Gatwick. Would appreciate Gatwick.
Alistair wants to land at Gatwick Airport, as he's flown there many times before. But Southampton is nearer, and even though he's never flown there before, he knows he has to get down fast.
And I am on 150 knots. Requesting radar assistance into Southampton.
When you're going to an airport that you're not used to, you normally have charts, let-down plates, that kind of thing that you can read up on and learn something of the airport you're going to. But he knew nothing of Southampton. He hadn't been there. He had no charts because everything had gone out the window. There was no let-down plates to look at the approach and so on.
All the maps and charts blew out of the window with the captain, and only the air traffic controller can guide Acheson. He turns towards Southampton.
Southampton, this is Speedbird 5390. Do you read?
Speedbird 5390. Good morning.
Identified on handover from London radar 6 miles west of Southampton
Airfield. What is your passing level?
Roger, sir. I am not familiar with Southampton. Request you shepherd me onto the runway.
When he spoke, he was obviously stressed. It sounded as if he was under a fair bit of pressure.
What is your number of persons on board?
We have 84 passengers on board, and I think that will be all until we are on the ground.
Roger, that's copied. I've been advised it's pressurisation failure. Is that the only problem?
Negative. The captain is half out of the aeroplane, I understand. I believe he's dead.
Roger, that is copied.
My feeling was, when he told me what was going on, it was one of disbelief, because it doesn't actually happen. You know, it's one of these things that you see in films, that happens in films, but it doesn't happen in real life. And it was sort of the hairs in the back of the neck go up, and there's this feeling down the spine, the tingle down the spine, and you think, no, it's not for real, but it's got to be.
Flight attendant holding on to him, but requesting emergency facility for the captain. I think he is dead.
Affirm. What is your passing level?
Leaving flight level 5,500 feet on 1019.
Roger, that's copied. I'll give you a little bit more space, then I'll turn you on to a heading of 180. Yeah, it's a full emergency. It's a 111.
Rundle contacts the emergency services at the first opportunity.
I don't know how many people are on board, but I'll let you know.
Could you confirm that the length of runway at Southampton is acceptable for a 111?
Yes, it is acceptable.
Acceptable for a 111, and I'll give you the figures shortly.
As long as we have have at least 2,500 metres, I am happy.
I'm afraid we don't have 2,500 metres. Neither do Bournemouth. We have a maximum of 1,800 metres.
Atchison is concerned that the plane is above its maximum landing weight, being full of fuel for the journey to Malaga. And the BAC-111 can't dump fuel. If the runway isn't long enough, he faces more problems.
Whether the aircraft could actually stop on the runway, or whether the tyres would burst, or whether he would go off the end of the runway. That's obviously what he was worried about when asking for 2,200 metres.
5390. Thank you very much. We are 3 greens and flaps 45. So we are set for approach, but make it please very gentle.
Yes, I will indeed. You are number 1 traffic.
If you think about it, all the airline pilot training is done with 2 pilots, both compass mentors in the cockpit, one flying the aeroplane and the other one doing all the emergency drills. So what you actually had was the captain hanging out the window, at least one person hanging onto his legs, and Alistair flying the aeroplane with nobody else to talk to.
Speedbird of 5390 is 9 miles from touchdown. You're clear to land. Wind indicates 020 degrees at 14 knots. Descend to height to 1540 feet. QFE is 1017.
Roger, sir. Descending to 1,500 feet. Talk me down all the way. I need all the help I can get.
Roger, you'll be able to stop the aircraft on the runway and evacuate the aircraft on the runway.
He must have been about 6 or 7 miles from touchdown. And obviously at that point I kept talking until he was happy he could see the runway and was happy to continue looking out the window and land the aeroplane. At the point he said he was visual with the runway, I effectively stopped talking.
Not acknowledge unless requested. It will be an uninterrupted talk down, but feel free to interrupt if you feel you need to.
5390. Thank you very much. I have the runway in sight.
Thank you. You are clear to land. Do you wish me to continue with any further information?
Negative.
"32 minutes after takeoff, with 81 terrified passengers, a nearly full fuel tank, and the captain blasted out of the window, Alistair Atchison attempts the most difficult landing of his career. At 8:55 a.m., flight BA-5390 makes a perfect landing at Southampton Airport. Immediately, emergency vehicles surround the plane. Firefighters remove the body of the captain and lead the passengers and crew away.
I remember seeing the co-pilot, the man who really, if it wasn't for him, we'd have been on the other side by now, and is walking down the runway very slowly, shaking his head, and he got an ambulance man walking with him with his arm around the shoulders of the co-pilot. And the co-pilot was shaking his head as if... I remember that distinctly. I don't know why, but I do.
Alistair Atchison has carried out a remarkable piece of flying, almost unprecedented in aviation history. He has had to pilot his plane without his captain, who has undergone physical stresses that nobody could have been expected to survive.
I think these extreme conditions, no one expects to occur in their lifetime. His survival time must have been measured in no more than tens of minutes as he became colder and colder and his body systems began to shut down.
Tim Lancaster's body was subjected to a two-pronged assault. The physical violence that his body suffered being blown out of the plane, and the extreme cold and lack of oxygen at 17,000 feet. Every 1,000 feet of altitude causes the temperature to drop by 2 degrees centigrade. So the temperature on the outside of the plane would have been around minus 17 degrees centigrade. The extreme wind chill also meant his body was losing heat very rapidly.
He would have lapsed into semi-consciousness and then unconsciousness, and as the temperature, his core body temperature fell, he would have finally died as a result of the excessive cold in that environment.
Despite the trauma that Captain Lancaster's body suffered, there was one final twist to his story.
You know, it's only once I've ever been here, and that was 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
In the Oxfordshire countryside, John Heward and Nigel Ogden are visiting one of their crew members who shared their horrific experiences.
Here he is.
Hi, guys. John, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, mate.
Nige. Come in. Hi.
Like on SCP, when you go in, you've got to pretend...
The captain of that fateful flight, Tim Lancaster, somehow survived his horrific ordeal. There were no fatalities on BA 5390.
Yeah, that's it now. You can go on the 3-day cruise across there.
As his frozen, lifeless body was removed from the plane, nobody thought that Tim could have survived such punishment. But remarkably, he was slowly beginning to emerge from his horrific adventure.
Tim, can you hear me?
I regained some consciousness on the ground at Southampton because I remember big red and white things, which were obviously fire engines and ambulances, not people and not conversation. And then my next clear, lucid thoughts were in hospital in Southampton. Over the next few days, all the bits eventually arrived back in my sort of consciousness, and I put the jigsaw together and, you know, sort of played the whole story for myself and understood what had happened. There was a big bang, a noise of all the air escaping, but I remember watching the windscreen move away from the aircraft, and then it had gone like a bullet. It disappeared into the distance. And I think there was an even bigger bang, or there was an even bigger bang. And I was very conscious of going upwards. And, well, the whole thing became completely surreal then, as it would. And I was aware of being outside of the airplane, but that really didn't bother me a great deal. What I remember most clearly is the fact I couldn't breathe because I was facing into the airflow. And I turned it round and actually turned my body round. I was sort of looking back along the top of the aircraft at that stage, and I could breathe then. And yes, I remember that. I can remember seeing the tail of the aircraft. I can remember the engines going round, and then I don't remember much more. Memory stopped at that point.
I went down there last year, but they've changed the airport totally now.
I'm glad I did hold on, because Tim was alive. I mean, he's a very strong man. He must have been, to survive that. I wouldn't have been able to survive it.
That's all very dramatic.
It is, look.
Tim Lancaster's survival was little short of miraculous. He'd been minutes away from death. It was Alistair Acheson's flying that saved his life. His quick thinking in getting the plane to the ground in only 22 minutes saved Lancaster from dying from the effects of exposure. And by pure chance, the physical trauma he suffered was limited. It included a bone fracture in his right arm and wrist, a broken left thumb, bruising, frostbite and shock. Remarkably, within 5 months, Tim Lancaster had made a full recovery and was flying again.
Reaper 539.
Of course, the captain wasn't the only one to go through a horrific experience. Battling with the controls whilst a tornado raged through the cockpit was something no commercial pilot could be trained for.
If it goes comfortable at all, just let me know.
The few pilots who are able to understand the experience of Acheson and his crew include these young Royal Air Force trainees.
Officer Shapley, seat 7. Line of subalterns, seat 3.
They are being put through a simulation of an explosive decompression in this hyperbaric chamber. It duplicates the effects of a window blowing out at 25,000 feet.
Individual intercoms.
Checked and operated.
All connections.
Checked and firm.
Console checks are complete. Clear to claim instruction of the medical officer.
Climbing to 8,000 feet at 4,000 feet per minute.
The atmospheric pressure is initially set to 8,000 feet. This is the pressure inside the sealed cabin of most commercial aircraft. Anyone can survive this for many hours with no ill effects. Any higher than that, and the experience is very different.
Is enabled.
Students, listen in. Will all students please indicate with a clear thumbs up that they are ready for rapid decompression? 8 thumbs, rest your thumbs. Students, stand by for rapid decompression. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
The mist in the hyperbaric chamber is identical to the fog formed when the window blew out on BA 5390. At the instant of rapid decompression, the air in the cabin can no longer hold onto its water vapor, which is then released into the atmosphere as fog.
Chamber altitude is stable at 25,000 feet. High hold is enabled. Cross vent is on and you're clear to commence hypoxia training.
Good, well done. Good, we'll commence hypoxia training on students 7 and 8.
Once the fog clears, then the lack of oxygen at that height begins to tell.
Okay, let's put you out your misery. Start copying these shapes in the right-hand bar, Jim.
Without oxygen, at first we begin to see a reduction in their reaction speed, and we see personality changes, much like someone experiences when intoxicated with alcohol. So we see that some students become euphoric, some students become quite subdued, and some students begin to develop forgetfulness.
Have a look at the ugliness of your colleagues' faces, see if they get any prettier whilst you're becoming hypoxic, and carry on with the
We see increasingly impaired performance in our students. Thinking is slowed and their reaction speed becomes increasingly slowed until they begin to develop sort of lapses of concentration, falling into unconsciousness, and finally death if their oxygen supply is not re-established.
Indicating that the blood is no longer carrying as much oxygen as it was. This is all about you experiencing your personal symptoms and having others observe the symptoms in you.
Flying alone, battling nearly 400-mile-an-hour winds, and defeating the possibility of oxygen deprivation, Alistair Acheson's achievement in saving Flight 5390 was outstanding. Even as the crisis was unfolding, accident investigators were rushing to Southampton to find an explanation. On the ground at Southampton Airport, the search for clues begins. Initial investigation shows no distortion to the frame of the windscreen, so this rules out a problem with the structure. The fact that there are no shards of glass also discounts a bird strike. Stuart Culling, senior investigator with the Air Accident Investigation Branch, has little to go on.
The windscreen was missing, there was a certain amount of blood around, there were some minor dents and scrapes on the fuselage, as you'd expect if the window had gone past, and really that was about it, apart from a lot of paper scattered around inside.
One of his first clues comes from the log recovered from the plane. He knows the plane had been serviced just the day before, and that a windscreen had been replaced. He immediately pays a visit to the British Airways maintenance hangar at Birmingham.
I wanted to find out exactly what had happened to the aircraft before it took off. And I'd arranged that I should talk to the shift maintenance manager who fitted the window. There was a slight problem there because he'd been on night duty, and consequently he had finished his shift at roughly the same time as the windscreen came out of the aircraft, and he wasn't in a fit state to be interviewed. He needed to get some sleep.
Stuart Culling.
Good morning. Nice to see you. I was expecting you.
Yes, good. Thank you very much. Is this the hangar in question?
This is the main hangar, yes.
Yes.
So in the meantime, I looked around the facility. I made sure that any paperwork and any records of the aircraft had been identified and taken away so they couldn't be accessed by anyone else, and waited until he came in.
Hello, I'm from the AIIB. Yes, and this is my colleague. What I'd like to do today is just find out what went on during that shift pattern and how it went. Thank you very much. Did you notice anything about the window itself, any stress marks that were worrying you?
My first conversation with the shift maintenance manager was relatively general, because at that stage we had no evidence that was relevant.
You didn't delegate it to somebody else and then check
Stuart,
it?
there's a phone call for you. Just come in.
Oh, right. Would you mind if I took this and come back?
So I took the call and found that it was information about the windscreen which had been found near Didcot, and there were something like 30 bolts found with it, most of which were one size short in diameter, one size too small in diameter.
It was a crucial error. On some planes, windscreens are fitted from the inside and use the internal pressure inside the cabin to keep them in place. But on the 111, the windscreen is bolted on from the outside. Any weakness in the bolts could mean that the pressure inside the plane would blow the windscreen out. It appears Culling has very quickly found the mistake and the guilty man.
I've had some news which I think is very relevant. I've heard from my colleagues who are working on the bolts. They tell me they're the wrong bolts. They're the wrong diameter.
No, that's not possible. They're exactly the same bolts that I took out of there.
He's a professional man. He's very keen on doing things, to his mind, in the interest of the company. And he's suddenly told that he's put a windscreen in using bolts of the wrong size. And he's absolutely shocked.
I can show you. I'll show you the bolts I got out of there.
One thing that came out was that he said, oh, the old bolts went into a waste bin in the hangar where he did the job, and they may still be there. So we rushed across to the waste bin and found something like 80 discarded bolts.
Here, they'll be in here. This is where I put them. These are the bolts.
And these are the ones you checked against the new ones?
That's right, yeah. I took
from the carousel.
It was really excellent evidence. Gold, as far as I was concerned.
Well, I'll take these away.
Okay.
By comparing the maintenance manual to what the engineer had told him, Culling is quickly able to identify the first part of the sequence, what went wrong the previous night when the window of the BAC 111 had been replaced.
We went through the whole chain of events that had occurred, and we found that there were something like 13 different anomalies which led to the fitting of the bolts. And had any of these caused him to think, the sequence of events would not have continued and there wouldn't have been an accident.
The engineer had come early into his shift, and at about 4 a.m. had gone to work removing the old windscreen from the plane. The hangar was full, and the plane had been pushed against the hangar door, which made the windscreen hard to reach. Stretched across the fuselage, he had problems controlling his screwdriver. The windscreen that he had taken out had itself been fitted with the wrong length bolts, but they were still strong enough to hold the screen in, and it survived without a hitch for 4 years. But he was a conscientious engineer, and he decided that he would replace the old bolts with new ones when he installed the new screen. He chose not to go to the parts catalogue and look up the exact bolts he needed. Instead, he went straight to the parts store.
Good morning.
Morning.
There, he matched by eye new bolts with the ones he had taken out of the screen. His eye match was good, and he found a few fresh bolts of exactly the same type in a drawer.
What I'm after is I need 97 Ds. I'm just doing a windscreen on a 111 over there, and I need some new bolts.
8 Ds on a 111?
Well, no, these are 7s. This is a 7. I've just taken it out.
We haven't got any 7s anyway.
OK. Right,
The store manager knew which bolts the engineer should have been looking for, but the engineer chose to ignore his advice. Instead, he drove to the other side of the airport to find a match for his bolts. It was now about 5:15 a.m., and in a dark corner of the hangar, he continued to search for new bolts identical to the ones he'd taken out of the plane. But in the gloom, his luck finally ran out. He thought they matched, but they didn't. He picked bolts that were just over 0.02 of an inch too narrow for the job. Returning to the 111, he stretched over the plane and began fitting these new bolts. Working at an angle, he couldn't see that the new bolts didn't fit correctly. Signing off at 6 a.m., the engineer had managed to get his work done in time. The plane was now ready to be handed over to Captain Lancaster and his crew. In fact, it was a disaster waiting to happen. The morning of the next day, the 111 was at 17,300 feet. The difference in pressure between the sealed hull of the jet and the thin atmosphere was climbing quickly to the half-ton per square foot it would reach at 35,000 feet. This pressure was looking for a weakness, and it found it. For Culling, finding out what had happened that night is only the first step. No one had hidden from him what they'd done, but he knows that he has to go deeper to understand the reasons behind this horrific sequence of events, why the engineer did what he did, and whether this was an isolated incident or the symptom of a bigger problem.
Accident investigation, certainly on aircraft, comprises 2 parts. The first part is what's happened, and that's usually relatively the easy bit. The second part is why did it happen?
Why did the engineer ignore procedure, bypass the technical manuals, and ignore helpful advice? Culling's search for the answers was in its own way revolutionary.
If we talk to people without giving them a warning, we felt we'd get more information because they'd be freer to discuss it. If we gave them a formal caution, as it were, we thought that they would dry up.
Coffee?
Yes, please.
Great. How was the journey in?
Oh, well, usual stuff.
They decide to talk to the engineer well away from the hangar in a cozy hotel room.
Well, thanks for coming in.
To gain insight into the methods of the maintenance engineers, Culling then does something no one had done before. He brings in a behavioral psychologist.
So, is the aircraft normally in the hangar when you're doing that?
Psychologists had been used before to analyze why pilots make mistakes under pressure. It's a discipline called human factors. But in 1990, using human factors in engineering was unheard of.
I wanted a professional slant on what is really psychological territory. I would hope that as far as the shift maintenance manager was concerned, that it gave him extra confidence that we were trying to be even-handed and that we were trying to get to the bottom of it.
You know, the parts catalogue. When you're getting the bolts out, do you go straight to the parts catalogue, or do you just sort of...
Not usually.
Right.
No, if I've got a set of screws and there's the same screws, I just go get them out of the carousels.
Right. You find it's easier to do it visually? It was, in that case, easier to do it visually from the bolts you take now?
Yeah, because they're the same bolts that come out, the same ones go back in, so same size bolts, there's no difference.
And if it worked before, it must be the right bolts?
Yeah, it's just replacing like with like, really.
Yeah, because it had been flying.
We were somewhat horrified that they had admitted those things to us, because after all, we were officially, in inverted commas, And they were quite proud of them. We would have thought that had they used such practices, they would have kept very quiet about it.
If I'd had to go check with the computers what bolts I needed and what parts and how to fit the thing, then there was a good chance it wouldn't have been flying at the time it was meant to be.
Good, good. So, when you're doing the job now, you're an experienced engineer, it might not be by the book all the time, like you would train somebody who was new.
No, not usually. We've been doing these things for years.
Culling was stunned by what he was hearing, but there were more revelations to come. The engineer's dangerous approach was becoming clearer by the minute.
You trusted your own knowledge better than the store supervisor's knowledge?
Well, I'm an engineer. I got 7D bolts out, so I put 7D bolts back in. That's, well, you know, no problem with that. It's that simple.
So you trusted that the aircraft had been flying, so therefore they must have been the right bolts?
Yeah, that aircraft had done lots of hours with that windscreen.
Their whole aim was to expedite work through their station. They had a lot of work coming. It was all done at night, and in many cases they had more work than they could reasonably handle. And they had devised little stratagems to get round that.
Culling and the psychologist's insights made their way into the first draft of the report. It said that there were systemic faults in the maintenance procedure in Birmingham. But under pressure from British Airways lawyers, and because they hadn't carried out their investigation following normal procedure, the final report was forced to change its emphasis.
By our, I mean the Treasury solicitor or whoever was advising the branch, confirmed that under natural law it was unfair to use that information because we hadn't gone through the whole procedure. And so we had to remove that from the report.
The investigators had never produced an accident report like it. Working with the psychologist, Culling developed a completely novel way of using human factors to explain why this accident happened. They uncovered pressures in the hangar that caused an otherwise proficient engineer to make potentially lethal mistakes whilst being certain he was doing the right thing. This psychological approach took air accident prevention to a new level. Through the sheer skill of the crew of BA 5390, as well as a small measure of luck, 87 people are now still alive. As a consequence of this investigation, others may never have to go through the same ordeal. In the aftermath of the accident, the crew were treated as heroes. They received numerous awards, and Alistair Acheson received the coveted gold medal for airmanship. Their colleagues also showed what they felt.
One of the most moving things was to go back to Birmingham. As we walked into the airport, the whole of the airport stopped. And all the ground staff and all the check-in girls and all that just stood and applauded as we walked through the building, and it was really quite, you know, moving at the time. You sort of wanted to get out of the way so that you could sort of, you know, I don't really want to do this. It's like walking up the red carpet sort of thing.
Their colleagues were applauding a team which had demonstrated the highest form of professionalism at every level. A cabin crew which worked as a team in extraordinary circumstances, and the co-pilot, an outsider who took control and worked alone to bring them all safely down to earth. Each of the crew dealt with their experience in different ways. Tim Lancaster began flying again with BA just 5 months after the accident. He's retired from BA, but loves flying so much he's now with another airline.
You cannot say that, she'll shoot you.
It was a special day when the first day I flew. I decided, you know, that was what I was going to do. I was going to make an effort to go back to work and get better. So having made the decision, the rest was easy.
For Nigel, the man who ran to Tim's aid and held on to him for dear life, the impact of that day was far more profound.
I think about it every day, and that is the truth. I think about it every single day, in one form or another, yeah, every single day. it'll affect me till the end of my days.
Nigel, along with Simon and Sue, no longer fly. But John Heward is still with British Airways as a chief steward. But even he isn't free of the memories of that day.
They were bringing in another British aerospace aeroplane to where I worked in Birmingham, and unfortunately that window was fitted from the outside, and the layout of the cabin was identical. And when I sat on it, it all came back to you. But for that reason, I've gone back to work at Heathrow and fly long-haul flights again, because those aeroplanes have got no resemblance to the 111 at all.
Alistair Acheson, who is still flying for British Airways, chose not to take part in this film. For each of the crew, the experience will stay with them in different ways. But common to them all is that on that day, their numbers did not come up.
Tim explained it very well, actually. And he said our names were on the page, but we weren't at the top. And I think that was, you know, probably true.
Russian flight to Hong Kong is in serious trouble.
The other way! The other way! To the left, now to the right.
Gravity has become a deadly force as the crew fights to keep the plane from falling to Earth from 10,000 meters.
Get out! Get out! Back!
The cause of all the chaos, a 15-year-old is at the controls.
Get it left, the ground is right there! 3,000? Right here.
We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Tower Aero Crew 603.
We are in an emergency.
Come and sit in my seat. Go on.
Pilot being filmed.
Are you filming?
It's a family outing. A proud pilot taking his kids on their first trip abroad. But in just a few minutes, their vacation will turn into a terrifying fight for their lives.
Hold the control column. Just hold it. Back, back.
Investigators would be amazed. How did a 15-year-old kid end up in the pilot's seat, flying a brand new passenger aircraft?
The other way. Back.
March the 22nd, 1994, Moscow. 15-year-old Eldar Kudrinsky is going abroad for the first time. He needs every gadget he has.
Eldar, Uncle Volodya is waiting.
I'm ready.
Come on.
But this is no ordinary kid. Eldar's father is Captain Yaroslav Kudrinsky, an international airline pilot. In Russia, that means membership of a privileged group and access to luxuries most of the country can only dream of.
Okay, let's go.
Ah, Captain is here. Now we can take off.
Hello, Uncle Volodya.
Hello.
Aeroflot allows pilots' families to travel once a year at a discount. So Captain Kudrinsky is taking his children on a 4-day holiday to Hong Kong.
Mom, it won't all fit.
Anybody would think we're going for a year.
Where is your daughter?
Listen to the music in a car. By the time they're our age, these kids are going to be deaf.
What?
Deaf.
Pardon?
Captain Vladimir Makarov, Volodya to his friends, is an Aeroflot pilot too. He's also going to Hong Kong on holiday and will be keeping an eye on the kids during the flight. Mrs. Kudrinsky is only going as far as the airport to see them off.
Eldar, Yana, promise you'll call as soon as you get there. Volodya, you will make them call me?
Yeah.
We'll call it as soon as we can, okay?
Come on, come on, come on.
Yaroslav and I love to travel, and so did the kids. They love seeing new places, learning new things. There was a chance for them to come along with their father, and they jumped at it.
Eldar and Yana aren't the only ones boarding Flight 593. Most of the 63 passengers are businessmen from Hong Kong and Taiwan, looking for opportunities in the new Russia. Others, like Adrian DeVille, have come from London, flying Aeroflot because it offers a cheap connection to Asia. He's the manager of a camera shop in northern England and has a passion for aircraft. In fact, he's going on a 2-week holiday to Hong Kong to photograph the new airport they've just built.
He'd go as far as he could. If he thought there was a good airport somewhere in the world, he'd try his best to get to that airport just to go and make some nice photographs.
And the trip to Hong Kong grew from that because and he wanted to see this brand new airport, which was a feat of engineering at the time.
Mark Newport is a British sports promoter who lives in Hong Kong.
Mark was in the army, was in the forces, and he went to Hong Kong and he just loved it, and got married out there. Chose an Aeroflot. I'd never heard of it until then, because it was just a cheap flight home.
In 1994, Russia is in a state of great change. 3 years earlier, the old Soviet Union finally collapsed. A new Russia is bursting out from behind the torn Iron Curtain. Its people want the freedoms of the West, the lifestyle, the international travel. But Russia's state-owned airline, Aeroflot, is getting a makeover too. They struggle to buy 5 new aircraft from the company Airbus Industry, the $70 million state-of-the-art Airbus A310-300. Though it seats fewer than 200 passengers, it can fly 3 times further than any of Russia's biggest passenger aircraft. The A310 is a fully automated aircraft equipped with sophisticated fail-safe systems. Aeroflot hopes it will help improve the company's checkered safety reputation.
Anytime there is a national carrier supported by their particular government, if that government is in turmoil, whether it's financially or political turmoil, it affects everything that's associated with that core government. Aeroflot is a national carrier, and so there's always the perception that they may not have had the monetary resources and the wherewithal to be a very structured carrier with a lot of oversight to ensure a high level of safety at that time.
Aeroflot has created a new, prestigious division around the Airbus fleet, Russian International Airlines. Pilots wear special uniforms, they fly state-of-the-art planes, and travel to the world's top destinations. RIA represents a new, modern Russia to the world.
After collapse of the Soviet Union, Aeroflot, still controlled by government, was forced to look for profits and develop a network which would be commercially justified.
For Russia's premier airline, Aeroflot handpicks an elite corps of first-class pilots. Each of them has thousands of hours of flying time, impeccable safety records, and fluent English. They're given special training by the manufacturers of the aircraft, Airbus Industry.
The airline had around 3,000 pilots at that time. Only 16 men were to be sent to be trained first. Only the best of the best made it. Kudrinsky and I started working here at Sheremetyevo at the same time, and naturally we first got acquainted simply as neighbors. Then we found out we were both pilots. Later, we both trained for the A310. We studied together.
I remember how hard it was for them to master it, because the technology was quite different. So they were working very hard, but they all got through it and started to fly.
Yana and Eldar are finally on board the new plane they've heard so much about from their father.
Hey, now you two behave, or Uncle Volodya will push the eject button.
Kudrinsky has 900 hours of flying the A310 under his belt.
I must go now,
It was their first trip abroad, but naturally, they had come along with him on other trips within Russia. They were quite well traveled for their age.
First, Captain Danilov will command the flight through the busy flight corridors out of Moscow. Relief Captain Kudrinsky will then take over. When he does, First Officer Piskarev becomes his co-pilot. All three are first-class pilots. On this new A310, the flight deck is fully computerized. Like other state-of-the-art aircraft, it's equipped with a sophisticated autopilot that can fly the plane for long stretches of the flight. International routes, like this one to Hong Kong, are Aeroflot's lifeline. They bring in precious hard currency at a time when the domestic market is struggling to turn a profit. Flight 593 takes off at 4:39 p.m. local time. Then it will join the Trans-Siberian Airway, flying east towards Mongolia and China. It's a smooth flight. Only 4 hours into the 10-hour trip, they've just passed over Novosibirsk in Siberia, almost halfway. But Eldar and Yana are too excited to sleep. Having negotiated the busy airways out of Moscow, First Captain Danilov takes a rest break. He hands over control to Relief Captain Kudrinsky, who now becomes acting captain for the next leg of the journey.
You have control.
I have control.
Still awake?
Yes, why?
Shall we surprise your father?
In the cockpit?
Hmm?
Oh, yeah.
Would you like that? Okay, let's go.
Aeroflot's most technically advanced aircraft is now cruising on autopilot at 10,000 meters. It's a calm, windless night, but the peace will not last. The pilots and crew will soon be fighting to save the lives of everyone on board. One of Aeroflot's new Airbuses is on a direct flight from Moscow to Hong Kong. Captain Kudrinsky is taking his children on their first trip abroad. They're about to pay him a surprise visit.
Have some very important visitors. Shall I bring them in?
Okay. Come on in.
Oh, hi, Dad.
This is First Officer Igor Vladimirovich Piskarev.
Hello. So, what do you think of our new airplane?
It's very nice.
It's amazing.
So it's quite different from our old Russian planes, huh?
Daddy, what's that?
Well, this is a flight computer. It flights the plane. It does everything automatically. Now, come and sit in my seat. Would you like to? Come on.
It's a quiet flight. Many passengers are sleeping, unaware of what is taking place on the flight deck.
Daddy, can I turn these?
Yeah. Now, Yana, would you like to pilot the plane?
No.
Put your hands on the control column. Come on, go on. But, don't touch any buttons, okay? Especially this red one, autopilot switch. You don't touch it, all right? Okay.
Kudrinsky turns the heading select knob. It doesn't disengage the autopilot. but allows him to turn the plane slightly to the left. It makes his daughter think she's flying the aircraft. The artificial horizon shows the plane is banking slowly left. This instrument is vital when you can't see the ground, as it shows the pilot how level the aircraft is in relation to the horizon.
Oh, it was you. You turned the plane.
Kudrinsky now puts the aircraft back onto its preset course, while First Officer Piskarev radios local air traffic control with their position.
Novokuznets, this is SU-593, flight level 330, heading 105.
Flight 593 is now over 3,200 kilometers east of Moscow, near the middle of Siberia.
Sierra Uniform 593, Novokuznetsk, flight level 350, heading 105.
Sierra Uniform 593, estimating Zakir at 1759.
Now it's Eldar's turn at the wheel. He's been waiting a long time for this moment.
Pilot being filmed.
Are you filming?
Yes, I am.
Can I turn this?
Yeah, but if you turn it to the left, where will the plane go?
Left.
Right. Look out to the left, watching for the ground when we're turning.
Eldar finds the control column quite stiff. It seemed to move easily when his sister was doing it, so he tries harder. But he can't make the plane turn because the autopilot is keeping it on course.
Is the plane turning?
Suddenly, the column turns easily.
Wait.
Is the plane turning to the left?
Yes, yes, it is.
Set the horizon to normal for him.
Once again, his father switches the heading select knob back to its original setting, ending the turn and Eldar's illusion of flying the plane. Captain Kudrinsky then selects navigation mode. It tells the autopilot to put the plane back on course to Hong Kong.
Dad? Dad?
But Eldar is still holding the wheel to the left. It's become stiff again.
Can I go back to my seat?
What for? You'll only go to sleep, and don't run in the first class. They will fire us.
Eldar now turns his control column slightly to the right, enjoying his time at the controls.
Well, I am going shopping on Temple Street. It's a famous market that only open at night.
Why is it turning?
Is it turning by itself?
Yes, it is.
It's been just over 3 minutes since Eldar sat down in the pilot's seat. The plane is tilting sharply, a turn that's getting steeper every second. The plane seems to be turning by itself, but no one seems to know why.
Some kind of zone.
We've gone into a zone, a holding pattern.
Have we?
Of course we have.
An arc has replaced the straight direction line on the screen. The arc looks like a plane in a holding pattern around an airport. As they study the screen, the plane continues to turn. It's now banked at 45 degrees, which is steeper than what it was built for. Suddenly, the command bars disappear from the primary flight display. The crew no longer have any information about course or heading. The plane is flying at 650 kilometers an hour and banking hard. Like a quick turn in a sports car, the dramatic movement of the aircraft begins to push everyone into their seats.
Guys!
The A310's autopilot works to keep the plane aloft. Suddenly, the nose pitches up. The increased G-force makes it difficult for Piskarev to reach the controls. He does his best, but nothing happens. Piskarev's hard turn to the left has had no effect on the plane.
Hold it. Hold the control column.
Eldar is the only one with both hands fully on the controls. He can only follow the most basic orders. He can't get up because the speed of the turn is pushing him back in his seat.
To the left. To the left. To the left, now to the right. The other way. I am trying to get left. Okay, get out.
Eldar has been in the pilot's seat for just over 4 minutes. And now he can't leave. His body feels twice its normal weight.
Get out. Get out.
Kudrinsky can do nothing but struggle against the crippling G-forces. The aircraft is plunging towards the snowy earth, and there's nothing anyone can do.
Crawl out to the back. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Russian International Airlines Flight 593 to Hong Kong is in serious trouble.
There's the ground.
The pilot's 15-year-old son has been at the controls for 4 minutes. The plane is turning steeply and losing altitude.
The other way!
Captain Kudrinsky desperately needs to get back into the pilot's seat, but he can barely move. The plane is turning so steeply and so quickly, the G-forces on his body make it feel like it's twice its normal weight. Everyone on board now feels the force of the plane's dramatic movements. His plane is in a serious crisis, but Captain Danilov can't get to the cockpit. He too is squashed by the powerful forces created by the plane's extreme bank. The plane still isn't responding. To add to their confusion, an alarm begins to sound. It signals the complete shutdown of the autopilot. The plane is now completely in the hands of Piskarev and Eldar. And to make matters even worse, there's another alarm.
The other way. The other
The
way.
plane is about to stall.
To the left.
An automatic safety system kicks in to keep the plane flying. It lowers the nose and puts the Airbus into a steep dive to regain speed.
There's the ground.
The plane dives at a frightening 40,000 feet per minute. For the people on board, it's like having an elevator fall out from under them. In just seconds, the heavy pressure of the high-speed turn is replaced by near weightlessness. As the plane suddenly drops away, it's now a very dangerous environment. People and objects that are not secured will land anywhere once gravity returns. They'd been flying at 10,000 meters, but now they're falling fast. Unless they do something quickly, they will hit the ground in less than a minute. Piskarev pulls back on the control column as hard as he can to bring the Airbus out of the dive. The nose finally comes up, and the aircraft begins climbing quickly. Gravity now returns with a shock. As the plane climbs, the rapid acceleration pushes people down relentlessly. The dramatic change in speed makes everyone feel 4 times heavier than normal. Meanwhile, First Officer Piskarev is still trying to gain control of the aircraft.
Thrust levers. Too slow.
Piskarev has pulled the aircraft out of the dive, but it's climbing too quickly. The engines on the A310 don't have enough power to push it almost vertically into the sky. The airspeed drops dramatically. The plane strains to climb, but it's been pushed too far. As the force of the acceleration eases, Kudrinsky leaps into action. But Piskarev has stalled the plane. The nose drops into a corkscrew dive. Now the Airbus is twisting towards the ground from 6,000 meters at a breathtaking 70 meters a second.
Full throttle.
For the first time since the crisis began, captain and co-pilot can work together to save the plane.
Full throttle, no? I got it. I have full throttle. Got it.
Kudrinsky pumps the rudder, the vertical surface on the tail, to help break out of the spin.
What's the speed? I don't see it.
At last, the plane seems to be responding. Working the rudder, Kudrinsky has nearly stopped the corkscrew dive.
Coming out. Coming out. Too much speed. Ease back on throttle a bit.
After a desperate struggle, the 2 pilots have managed to pull the plane out of its terrifying spin. They're starting to level out, but still not completely in control.
We'll get out of this. Everything is fine. Easy. Pull backwards a little bit.
In all the chaos of the past few minutes, the pilots don't know exactly how far they've fallen. Suddenly, they run out of time.
Sierra Uniform 593, this is Novokuznetsk area control. Please come in.
500 kilometers north of the Mongolian border, air traffic controllers in Novokuznetsk wait for Flight 593 to radio that it's left their control area.
Area control, please come in.
Less than 2 hours later, the first search party goes out to look for the Airbus in the frozen, rugged Siberian wilderness. They finally locate the remains of Flight 593 on a wooded hillside about 100 kilometers east of Novokuznetsk. It's soon clear there are no survivors among the 75 passengers and crew. This was a brand new aircraft, fitted with the latest technology. What could have brought it down? Why was there no warning, not even a distress signal? The Russian media are quick to speculate. Could it have been a terrorist bomb?
When I was in Moscow, the news we had that it could have been a terrorist act, because we had terrorist acts on aircraft previously. We was completely unaware, other than that nobody had survived it.
For some time, they wouldn't tell me anything specific. And only on the next day, the airline director told me there was no hope whatsoever. It was a horrible moment, of course. Horrible. It's hard to believe.
Aeroflot flies the families of the deceased out to Moscow. Among them is Brenda Clark, the mother of British passenger Mark Newport.
We met my daughter-in-law there. They've told us, you know, it's cordoned off, we can't go down there. And she said, you can go down there, Bren, because the Chinese are down there. They have to do rituals and things, you know. And so she said they're down there. That's when I knew they'd lied to me and said that it's cordoned off. And that's when I told them, I want to go down, and if you don't take me down, then I thumb a lift.
The authorities take them to where the plane crashed. Relatives of Chinese victims drop pieces of paper with messages written on them. Others throw flowers.
Yeah, that was really moving. We had the flowers, they had the little, they wrote messages on, I think, on these pieces of paper, and they threw them out. It's lovely. Yeah.
The Russians take the families to a morgue in a town near the crash site, where the recovered bodies are being held. Many are too badly mutilated to be identified. They ask the families to look at recovered items of clothing to help identify the bodies. Brenda Clark finds her son's family photographs. It sends a chill through her. For the first time, she knows for certain he was on the flight. The recovery operation gets underway. The Russian government mobilizes 238 soldiers, police, investigators, and rescuers. Everyone in the aviation world wants to know how a brand new state-of-the-art Airbus could fall out of the sky without any warning. Does the A310 have problems no one knows about? They need to find out fast. Chief Accident Investigator Ivan Mashkivsky is in charge. The crash site itself offers few clues. The ones he does have are puzzling. Unbroken bottles of champagne, a flight attendant in an oxygen mask, and finally the body of at least one child thrown into the cockpit. The plane's digital flight data recorder indicates the engines were running when it hit the ground. He rules out engine failure. Mashkivsky needs the expertise of a man who knows the A310 well. Someone who can also recreate the fatal flight and find out what exactly went wrong. Vladimir Biryukov is an experienced test pilot and crash investigator at the Gromov Institute in Moscow. He's an expert on the A310 Airbus. Biryukov was directly involved in testing and certifying the aircraft prior to the Russians buying it.
Because of the fate of this plane, the fate of this airline, my first reaction was shock. How could such a thing happen? All I knew was that the plane had crashed somewhere over Siberia. I remember spending a sleepless night, distraught, and trying to figure out what might have happened and what could have caused it.
Yeah, come.
I think you should come and listen to this.
Each investigation begins with a complete analysis of the plane's cockpit voice recorder. This time, it reveals something disturbing.
Now, come and sit in my seat. Would you like to? Come on.
Daddy, can I turn these?
Yeah.
Kudrinsky was in the pilot seat, wasn't he?
According to the diagram.
Can I turn this a bit?
Yeah, but if you turn it to the left, where will the plane go?
Left.
Right. Look out.
Again.
Can I turn this a bit?
Yeah, but if you turn it to the left, where will the plane go?
10 years ago, it wasn't unusual for people to be invited up to the cockpit. Of course, since 9/11, it's become a lot tighter, and you will find cockpit doors are locked generally throughout the flight.
Every country sets its own rules as to who has the authority or the access to the cockpit. In some countries, it's up to the captain, so the captain can invite guests up to the cockpit. But to have them actually manipulating the controls of an airplane, regardless of whether they have people on it or not, the fact that this was allowed to occur is definitely an exception in the industry.
Dad, can I go back to my seat?
The two investigators are stunned by what they hear on the cockpit voice recorder.
It's unbelievable. These two youngsters, the ones who we couldn't identify, they were not thrown into the cockpit by the crash. They were his kids.
And they were flying the plane.
The investigators are speechless. How could 3 experienced pilots allow children to fly a commercial airliner? They're about to learn something even worse. The children are only part of the problem. A little-known feature of the plane proved deadly.
Why is it turning?
Is it turning by itself?
Turning to the left. The other way. The other way. To the left now, to the right. The other way. I am turning it left. Okay, get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Come on, get out. Get out. Get to the left. The ground is right there.
Russian investigators listen to the cockpit voice recorder of an Aeroflot Airbus that has crashed in Siberia. What they hear makes their blood run cold.
Full throttle. Got it. Got full throttle. Full throttle, no.
You should understand the frame of mind of the father. He is very proud of what he's doing. He invites his kids into the cockpit. Strictly speaking, it's a violation, of course. But I know such violations do occur in real life. I'm not condemning him or defending him here. What I'm trying to say is that no disaster occurs for just any single reason. There's always more than one, all coming together.
But this time, it really does look like a single cause. A child flying the plane. And it sends shockwaves through Aeroflot's higher echelons.
No, I think it would benefit them.
Investigators feel the pressure. The media has learned that Eldar was at the controls. Aeroflot, trying to improve on its Soviet-era image, wants to minimize the damage. Boris Rybak is an aerospace consultant in Moscow.
Aeroflot managers and executives indeed try to conceal results and try to downplay importance of this accident because it was very embarrassing.
Managers at Aeroflot aren't the only ones following the investigation. Airbus, the European company which made the plane, is also intensely interested.
Ivan Efremovich, what's wrong?
Nothing.
If the accident was caused by Eldar, it will vindicate Airbus. At the same time, grieving families are also clamoring for answers.
Are you sure?
For Mashkivsky and his team, it's a delicate balance.
There is always more than one reason for a plane to crash. And we must find it.
I'll do my best.
His reputation, the reputation of Airbus, as well as Aeroflot, all now depends on finding this other cause.
This was an international flight. It was a Western-built aircraft, and it was inevitable that the investigation that would be conducted by the authorities and the inquiries that would be conducted by claimant lawyers would expose information.
At the same time, manufacturer of the aircraft, Airbus industry, was very keen to get as much realistic explanation of what happened because the reputation of this aircraft was at stake.
What I objected to was the way we was treated by Aeroflot after the accident. They wouldn't tell us anything what was going on. They denied everything. I wanted to know why my son died. I wanted to know why these men had been allowed to do such a thing. But all we got from Aeroflot was blank, blank, blank. Every time we tried to find something out, they just didn't want to know.
Families aren't the only ones desperate for answers. Vladimir Biryukov continues trying to learn all he can about why the Airbus fell out of the sky. Analyzing information from the flight data recorder, he can trace and repeat every command given to the aircraft during the flight.
We were trying to get as close to the truth as possible, to find the cause, because that was the precedent. The first foreign-produced plane to crash while flying for a Russian airline.
Don't run in the first class.
The investigation confirms the autopilot was on when the plane got into trouble. Even with the children in the cockpit, the plane should have flown on course. What went so terribly wrong?
So, any new developments?
We can discount Kudrynsky's daughter. She sat in the chair, but she didn't fly the plane. At 17:14:07 and 6 seconds, Captain Kudrynsky tells her not to touch the autopilot switch.
Her father gave the autopilot the command to turn, while Yana just rested her hands lightly on the controls.
It was you. You turned the plane.
But when Eldar took the controls, Biryukov discovers, something dramatically different happened. No one could possibly have guessed. Not even the 3 pilots in the cockpit. Biryukov may have found the key to the puzzle. The plane's flight data recorder shows that 2.5 minutes before the crash, while Eldar was at the controls, the autopilot partially disconnects. This is the start of all the plane's troubles. But how did that happen? The autopilot is a sophisticated computer which manages an aircraft's speed, altitude, and heading. Altitude and heading are controlled by 3 key functions. The rudder, which controls sideways movement. The elevators, which control vertical movement. And the ailerons, which are for turning. On Flight 593, the autopilot had disconnected itself from the ailerons.
And the autopilots that were used in transport airplanes years ago were an on-off. In today's sophisticated flight management systems, you can literally take fragments of the autopilot and disengage them, but not necessarily turn the switch off and turn it all off, unless you want to.
The question that really worries accident investigator Biryukov is how did the autopilot become partially disconnected? There's no mention of it in the cockpit voice recording. If this is a fault with the aircraft, it could prove fatal to future flights. The only way to know for certain is to reconstruct the accident on a flight simulator at Airbus Industries headquarters in Toulouse, France. Biryukov's experience as a test pilot and his detailed knowledge of the A310 is crucial to the investigation. Using information from the flight data recorder, Biryukov reconstructs the events, beginning at the moment Captain Kudrinsky allows his son to sit at the controls. A co-pilot will help replicate Piskarev's actions.
Look out to the left, watching for the ground when we're turning.
Unlike his sister, Eldar turns the wheel before his father can tell the autopilot to turn the plane. The controls are stiff because he's fighting the autopilot. In the simulator, Biryukov reproduces Eldar's every movement.
Now it's starting to go. Going. Going. There. Hold it long enough and it disconnects.
How long?
30 seconds. And it disconnects smoothly.
No warning.
No. No.
No one in the cockpit knows it, but this is a critical moment. Eldar's resistance actually turns part of the autopilot off. It takes just half a minute, but from here on, Eldar is controlling the ailerons. Eldar is actually steering the plane.
Why is it turning?
Is it turning by itself?
Yes, it is.
What seemed like an open and shut case is suddenly much more complex.
To the left, the back, the other way.
The 15-year-old flying the plane isn't the only reason they crashed. The discovery highlights an apparent flaw in how pilots are trained on the A310.
I got it, I have full throttle.
Accident investigator Vladimir Biryukov has finally discovered the terrifying sequence of events that made Aeroflot's Flight 593 fall to Earth. Captain Kudrinsky's 15-year-old son had turned the plane's control column against the programmed flight settings. This disconnected the autopilot without warning from the ailerons which turned the plane.
There. Hold it long enough and it disconnects.
How long?
The aircraft then began an uncontrolled turn to the right, which got steeper and steeper. But why didn't anyone realize the autopilot had disconnected?
Another peculiarity of the plane is that it has no alarm signaling the disengaging of the autopilot in the list channel. While our Russian planes have an alarm sounding in such an event. So I think that the captain allowed the boy to do it, irregular as it was, believing that even if the autopilot got disengaged, the crew would be alerted to the fact.
The A310 Airbus has only a small light to tell the crew the autopilot has disconnected. There's no alarm. And the Russian crew was obviously unaware of it. But there's also another reason why no one realized what was happening. The autopilot still appears to be working normally because it's controlling the plane's other functions. Although the plane is now banking, the situation isn't yet critical. At this point, if the crew takes the proper action, they can still stabilize the plane. Eldar is the first to notice that the artificial horizon is at an angle.
Why is it turning?
Is it turning by itself?
Yes, it is.
The three pilots don't understand this at all. After all, Kudrinsky returned the flight to its autopilot heading. Makarov offers an explanation.
Going into some kind of zone.
We've gone into a zone, a holding pattern.
Have we?
Of course we have.
Increasing 1 degree per second. 27 degrees. Now we should be entering into the zone.
What's that?
A strange arc now appears on the navigation panel. It looks like the course a plane would take circling an airport waiting to land.
There appeared an arc very much resembling the arc that appears on the display when a plane enters a waiting zone. There are waiting zones around airports. When too many planes accumulate, they enter such a zone and circle around while they wait. But there could be no such zone at that point on the route. And yet we hear in the voice recording, "Hey, we're entering a zone."
This false holding zone distracts the crew for 9 seconds. In that time, the plane crosses a critical threshold. The Airbus is now banking at 45 degrees, far beyond its design limits. It cannot turn this steeply and maintain height. It's now losing altitude.
Guys!
But the Airbus Autopilot is no longer controlling the ailerons. Its other functions try to compensate by pulling the plane's nose up and increasing power to maintain altitude. Passengers are pushed back into their seats. It's on the verge of stalling. It starts to shake like a leaf.
Hold it! Just hold it!
Part of the flight control panel now goes dark. It's a warning sign that the plane has gone beyond its design limits. From here on, the Airbus is out of control. By recreating the fatal flight, Biryukov has worked out how a lapse in judgment and concentration has resulted in a catastrophic crisis. But could the crew have saved the plane and its passengers? The pilots of Flight 593 tried to bring the plane out of its fatal dive by pulling up, but they go too far. The plane climbs steeply and stalls.
We're losing altitude.
Now we've started to spin, so what do we do?
It's coming out of the corkscrew.
Now we're leveling out. In a moment, we'll come out of the dive.
All they had to do was let go. The plane has an inbuilt survival mechanism which won't allow it to stall, even at very low speed. But the pilot has to know that.
But the situation is totally new to them, something they weren't accustomed to handling. A stressful and incomprehensible situation. It would have taken special skills to act correctly in such a difficult situation. It was not the crew's fault, but their misfortune, because if a person doesn't know how to do something, because he was never taught to, you can't really blame him.
The team's perseverance in an open and honest investigation did show that there was more than one simple cause behind the accident. Their findings benefited the whole industry, especially the revelation that the autopilot can partially disconnect. This remains a feature of the A310, as it enables pilots to control certain elements of a flight while leaving the rest to the computer. But crews are now made aware of this. Captain Kudrinsky's misfortune is that it was triggered in a way that was unexpected and difficult to detect. The crash of the Russian plane comes at a troubling time for the airline industry. In 1994, the same year that Flight 593 went down, a series of crashes in the United States raised questions about how commercial pilots handle upsets, situations in which an aircraft finds itself in extreme flying conditions.
When we think about upset in a large airplane, we think about an attitude of the airplane that's beyond what normal flight regimes would be. That is, greater than 20 degrees nose up, greater than 10 degrees nose down, and bank angles greater than 25 degrees.
Within a year, the industry had begun offering pilots upset recovery training, teaching them skills to handle extreme situations like the one on Flight 593. The tragedy of one trip to Hong Kong may have contributed something to the safety of other passengers and crew. For parents and friends of those on board, though, what happened that night is never far from their minds. Adrian DeVille's body was one of 22 that were never identified. Their remains were cremated together by the Russian authorities.
In mine, he was asleep, and that's the way I deal with it, and, you know, he didn't know much about it.
The crew of the Airbus are buried in Mitinskoye Cemetery in Moscow, in a hero's grave, next to the firefighters who died at the Chernobyl nuclear plant. Yana and Eldar lie next to their father.
I can imagine the horror they experienced in their last moments. He knew there were not only all those people depending on him, but also his own kids.
Yes, it was a violation. Yes, he did it. But how it all happened, it was just a freak accident, a bizarre coincidence.
I can forgive the pilot. I can forgive the children because they were innocent. This man was 39 years old, and for those 39 years he had an exemplary flying career. He had a family, he was proud of them, and it was the final 5 minutes of those 39 years that went awry.
Yeah, children shouldn't have been allowed in the cockpit, I don't believe, but me saying that now won't bring Mark back, will it? But it might stop things happening in the future.
Where's Adam direct to? My God, he's flying north.
A Boeing 737 is badly off course.
Adam 574, confirm our position, please.
The crew struggles to get the plane back on track.
This is crazy!
They're lost in a violent storm when their plane starts rolling over.
Pull up! Pull up!
The lives of 102 people are at risk.
Adam 574, Yujong control.
Then, mysteriously, Adam Air Flight 574 disappears without a trace. January the 1st, 2007, Surabaya, Indonesia. It's New Year's Day. There are celebrations throughout the country. Surabaya's airport is bustling. And not just because of the holidays. Indonesia is experiencing a boom of budget airlines. Many people are taking advantage of the cheaper fares.
For the average Indonesian, it meant that the explosion of low-cost carriers made it much more possible to actually get on a plane and fly.
One of those new airlines is Adam Air.
Good afternoon, departure. This is Adam 574.
Adam 574, this is ground control. Go ahead.
Adam Air was successful because it provided a fresh image to the industry. I mean, they came in with, bright colors. Their airplanes were painted in fantastic orange. The crew was, flashy uniform. They had everything right going for them.
Captain Refri Widodo has been flying with Adam Air for 6 months. Today, he's in command of Flight 574, a short domestic flight. His co-pilot, Yoga Susanto, has been with the airline for almost a year and a half. Before the discount travel boom, many passengers wouldn't have been able to afford this flight.
More and more people were able to fly, could afford the tickets, and they didn't care too much about the services offered simply because they just were intent on getting from point A to point B as cheaply as possible.
There are 96 passengers and 6 crew members on today's flight. Controllers at the airport are busy juggling planes.
Okay, the 574 is clear for takeoff.
80 knots. Check. V1. Rotate.
Today's flight is a routine 2-hour hop. From Surabaya on the island of Java to Manado on the island of Sulawesi, almost 1,700 kilometers northeast. It's the beginning of the rainy season. Weather is unpredictable. Forecasters are expecting fierce storms. Captain Widodo is aware that there may be bad weather ahead.
Turn right direct to Fando and climb to flight level 330.
Roger, turn right direct to Fando and climb to flight level 330, Adam 574.
Minutes after takeoff, the crew turns on the autopilot. The flight computer will fly the plane and navigate it along a pre-planned route to Manado.
Now passing flight level 220, climbing to flight level 330.
Roger, Adam 574, track direct to Diola.
Confirmed. Tracking direct to Diola, Adam 574.
22,000 feet below, air traffic controllers track the flight's progress on radar and confirm that it's on course. The plane is beginning to experience some turbulence. Less than half an hour into the flight, air traffic controllers notice something out of the ordinary.
Where's Adam direct to? My God, he's flying north.
Flight 574 has flown off course and is now heading into a violent storm. Air traffic controllers don't know why.
Yes.
On board the plane, the pilots try to understand how far they have drifted off course.
The IRS. 28 is the difference.
And try to fix the problem with the computerized system that handles navigation.
May I have your attention? This is your captain speaking. We are about to experience some turbulence.
Could all the passengers return to their seats?
Controllers on the ground try to get Flight 574 back on course, giving them directions to their next assigned waypoint called Diola.
Adam Air 574, maintain 350, direct to Diola.
Confirmed, flight level 350, direct to Diola, Adam 574.
But to get there, Flight 574 must pass through a severe storm. "137-kilometer-an-hour winds beat on the plane's hull. It's pounded by hail and rain. The weather is making it hard to see. The crew is not just concerned with the weather. They're still also trying to understand the problem with the plane's navigation system.
This is messed up.
Getting lost over the ocean is everyone's worry, because when you lose your navigational instruments or you lose trust of your navigation instruments, what do?
Co-pilot Susanto consults the aircraft's handbook.
It's starting to fly like a bamboo ship.
Captain Widodo doesn't know where he is. He needs directions.
Confirm our position. Adam 574, confirm our position, please.
Roger, Adam 574. Position is 125 miles. Mike, Kilo Sierra, crossing radial 307. Mike, Kilo Sierra.
The weather in Mike Kilo Sierra isn't good.
The storm is growing worse.
This is crazy. We're going to get lost if it stays like this.
Captain Widodo wants to take over navigation of the plane from the flight computer.
Okay, put the IRS in attitude.
But suddenly, a warning. The autopilot has disengaged completely. Then many of Susanto's computerized instruments go blank. The crew doesn't notice that their plane is rolling over. Flight 574 is banking at a dangerous angle.
They enter this.
Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle.
If it rolls too far over, it could send the plane and the 102 people on board into a fatal downward spiral.
Okay, put it back on nav again. Put it back on nav again. Put it on nav again.
Captain Widodo wants to re-engage the flight computer's navigation system. The plane is still rolling, and now its nose has started to point downward. Another alarm tells the pilots that they are entering a steep descent.
Don't turn it! This is our heading!
Adam 574, Yujung Control. Adam 574, Yujung Control. Adam 574, radar service terminated. Please contact Yujung Control at 128.1.
Inexplicably, Flight 574 has disappeared. News of Adam Air Flight 574's disappearance spreads quickly. The Indonesian government starts mobilizing search and rescue teams to find it. First Air Marshal Edi Suyanto will coordinate the search and rescue.
Pada tanggal 1 Januari 2007.
On the 1st of January 2007, I received a verbal notification from the Vice Assistant Operation Head of Air Force that Adam Air had not landed in Manado.
Belum mendarat di Manado.
Indonesia's National Transportation Safety Committee, or NTSC, is also notified. The NTSC is responsible for finding out what went wrong in any plane crash. Franz Wieners is in charge of investigating Adam Air 574.
The first steps that we take when there was an accident or serious incident, we will find all the resources that we have and get the team together before we dispatch to the area.
Working with air traffic control, the searchers try to pinpoint the last recorded location of Flight 574.
mendapatkan laporan juga bahwa
I received the report that Adam Air was lost from the radar in the Majin Sea.
Laut Majeni.
The plane was last detected by radar as it was crossing the sea, about halfway through its intended journey.
Okay, so right around here.
But the plane could have flown hundreds of kilometers after that signal was received. It's impossible to pinpoint the exact location.
When the aircraft went missing, it was a bit of a shock for everybody because in this day and age, nobody expects an aircraft to go missing.
Without a specific location, searchers try to figure out how large an area to scan. Since they know how much fuel was on board, investigators can calculate how far the plane could have flown since it was last detected.
If this is their last radar hit, they didn't have enough fuel to fly any further than this.
More than 3,000 people are sent out to look for the plane. The Indonesians are joined by a US Navy vessel. But the area they have to search is the size of Ireland. The teams don't even know whether to look on land or on water.
And as long as there was no definitive word, hope remained.
12 hours pass without any confirmed sightings. And then friends and relatives' hopes are raised with news that survivors have been found.
A new report came in saying that they had found the Adam Air wreckage in the mountainous area of Polowali, with 100 victims and 12 survivors still alive.
Rescue teams hurry to the island of Sulawesi, hoping to return survivors to their families. They also hope to discover what went wrong on board the plane.
When news broke that some people might have survived the crash, the already incredibly stressed and emotional families of the survivors thought, whoa, maybe there is a chance. Maybe my wife, cousin, husband, brother has survived.
But when the first officials get there, they find that these survivors are not from the flight at all.
So they were ferry survivors, not airplane survivors.
They're from a ship that sank in another storm near where Flight 574 is thought to have crashed. Now the rescue teams are back to square one.
It led people's hopes up. And people flocked to Makassar and they were finding ways how to get to the crash site, only to find that it's not there.
For family members, it's a bitter disappointment.
Sebetulnya kita malu.
We were ashamed because the information was already spread all over before we verified it. Our government was embarrassed that we publicized that information.
It's been a week since the crash. With each passing day, the chance of finding any survivors grows smaller.
There was still no clear picture of exactly where the plane had crashed and how it had gone down and why it had gone down.
Wieners needs to locate the wreckage as soon as possible. Most of all, he needs the 2 black boxes that record conversations in the cockpit and flight data. There are beacons attached to the boxes, but they only have a 30-day battery life. 9 days after the crash of Adam Air Flight 574, a fisherman finds what he thinks might be part of an airplane, 300 meters off the coast of Sulawesi. The piece is taken to an Indonesian Air Force base for analysis. Franz Wieners quickly identifies that it is part of a right elevator. He examines it to see if it belongs to Adam Air Flight 574.
We checked with the serial numbers, we checked with the part numbers.
The numbers match.
So we are definitely sure that it is from the aircraft.
The finding confirms that Flight 574 crashed at sea. The team can now narrow down its search to the area where the elevator was found. Since the accident involves an American-made plane, the US National Transportation Safety Board joins the investigation. And they send structural engineer Clint Cruikshanks to Indonesia.
We started working with the NTSC to look at radar data, air traffic transmissions, weather data, trying to bring all that information together to find the airplane.
The water that investigators plan to search for wreckage is 6,500 feet deep, much too deep to send down divers.
It was quite deep water, deeper than we're normally used to recovering airplanes from.
The Indonesian government wants Adam Air to pay for the salvage operation. Investigators meet with representatives of the airline.
It is going to be expensive. We need to hire contractors to go down that far.
Adam Air felt that its responsibility only went so far. The government and most of public opinion believed that Adam Air's responsibility was actually almost total because they were the owners of the airline.
The airline refuses to pay for the salvage, triggering a lengthy negotiation. This is not good news for Franz Wieners. Unless someone puts up the money to search the seabed for wreckage, the mystery of Flight 574 will not be solved. It is also a blow to the families of the victims.
The families obviously wanted to know what had happened to their loved ones, and they did want the government and Adam Air to combine to get the flight data recorders out of the water.
As the investigation stalls, public anger grows.
People were becoming more and more critical of Adam Air and the way it was being run.
But then, after 7 months of negotiating,
this is good news. Thank you.
Adam Air agrees to help pay for the salvage. Phoenix International, an American company specializing in deep-water salvage, starts the operation on August the 24th. But the time they've lost has had a serious consequence. Although they have a fix on the location of the crash, the locator beacons attached to the black boxes have gone dead.
If the black boxes are not found, it will be a mystery until today.
Without the beacon, finding 2 small boxes among the wreckage will be a huge challenge. To make matters worse, Adam Air has only put up enough money for 1 week of searching.
So it was like, go out there, if you don't find anything in 7 days, you're done.
After locating debris with sonar, an unmanned remote-controlled submarine is sent down to look for the black boxes.
How are we doing? We dove on one location first. We got to that GPS location. There was nothing there.
Pull up quadrant 3.
So we sat down and decided we'd do a grid search about that point. And so we did a very methodical search.
Okay, 3 degrees. All right. Slow, slow. We're coming up on something.
We started picking up small, lightweight pieces of airplane wreckage. Things like life vests, seat trays, light bits of metal.
Oh my God, this is it.
Investigators get their first look at the wreckage.
This plane is ripped apart.
The state of the wreckage illustrates just how violent this plane crash was.
The little pieces of wreckage didn't tell us anything about the cause of the crash. They did tell us, however, that the airplane hit the water at a very high rate of speed. This was the most fragmented airplane that I have ever seen.
Only 2 days into the operation, Cruikshank spots something.
All right, stop. Rotate back 5 degrees.
I noticed on the left side of the video screen something that appeared to be orange, and I instructed the ROV operator to take a closer look at it.
That's it. That's it. Okay.
Once we got over there, we realized that, yeah, this in fact was the FDR.
The plane's flight data recorder has been found.
All right, good work, Joe. Let's get this up.
We were very excited that we had seen and recovered one of the boxes.
Investigators soon find the cockpit voice recorder nearby.
All right, stop. That's it.
Their week is up. The salvage operation is over. Investigators now hope that they have all the clues they need to solve this accident.
The black boxes is the only source for the evidence that we have, because we don't have the wreckage, we don't have the witnesses.
But the boxes have been lying on the bottom of the sea for almost 8 months. They could be damaged beyond repair. They may not yield any information at all. The black boxes from Adam Air Flight 574 are taken to the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C. Investigators think the labs there are the best bet at salvaging any possible information.
If an FDR is found in salt water, it needs to be washed in fresh water and then contained in water the entire time until it makes it to our lab.
Salt and air together create a chemical reaction that results in rust. The rust can damage the electronic components in the recorders. Keeping them submerged in fresh water delays that reaction.
The importance of having the data depends on the circumstances of the accident. If you're able to recover wreckage in other parts to investigate, then you don't necessarily need to rely on the data. For this particular accident, since the wreckage was going to stay at the bottom of the ocean, it was essential that we had data from the recorders.
Franz Wieners also makes the trip to the United States.
The FDR and the CVR, when they were recovered from the bottom of the sea, the cases were actually 50 or 60% damage.
We thought there might be an issue in recovering the data. It wasn't as damaged as many others we've seen, so we were fairly confident if there was data recorded, we would be able to get the data off of it.
Technicians begin the painstaking process of retrieving the information. The job is a multinational effort.
The Australian Transport Safety Bureau was requested to assist. We have an excellent relationship with the NTSB folk, and so our flight recorder specialist went to the United States and worked alongside the NTSB.
The electronic components containing the data are carefully removed and dried. Then the information is uploaded onto a computer. As the delicate procedure of recovering the data from both recorders progresses, investigators are aware that they have an additional concern.
As you can tell,
one problem that we ran up against in this investigation is the maintenance records indicated that the flight data recorder was written up as being inoperable in the weeks prior to the crash. We were concerned with that in that if we found the FDR, it may not have recorded anything.
Investigators keep their fingers crossed.
We've got it all. It's all there.
I was confident once we found out that we had 100% of the data that we would be able to solve this accident.
The two black boxes provide investigators with the first solid clues about why Flight 574 fell from the sky.
Good afternoon, departure. This is Adam 574. Now passing
Flight level 220, climbing to flight level 330.
Roger, Adam 574, track direct to Diola.
Confirmed, tracking direct to
Diola, Adam 574.
The conversation in the cockpit tells investigators that the crew knew that the plane's navigation system was sending them off course.
The IRS.
28 is the difference.
They're drifting.
And that they were preoccupied with fixing that problem.
This is messed up.
Where's Adam direct to? My God, he's flying north. Adam Air 574, maintain 350, direct to Diola.
Confirmed, flight level 350, direct to Diola, Adam 574.
To get from one waypoint to the next, the flight computer always has to know the plane's exact location. That information comes from a component called the IRS, or Inertial Reference System. It tracks every adjustment to the plane's course to calculate its exact position. It then feeds that information to the autopilot.
The autopilot needs to know where the aircraft is and where it needs to go. Now, the autopilot takes those data from the IRS in terms of height, heading, and speed.
But for the system to keep track of the plane's heading, it has to know where the plane started. The IRS has to be calibrated before takeoff. Usually, the crew will enter the coordinates of the gate as the starting point for the computer to track. Investigators wonder if the IRS guided the plane off course because the wrong initial coordinates were entered.
Rods, we just got this.
They check this by looking at information from the flight data recorder.
The numbers are fine when they're on the ground.
Yes.
The data confirms the IRS was calibrated before Adam Air Flight 574 took off.
This is where it begins.
But for some reason, the IRS began to send the plane off course almost as soon as the flight got in the air.
It just gets worse and worse.
I have something else I'd like to show you. Some maintenance logs.
Cruikshanks and Wieners look at the maintenance history of the IRS system that was on board Flight 574.
As you can tell, there's more than 100 write-ups here. Look at this.
Same unit. Same problem.
That's right.
The history shows that there had been numerous complaints about the plane's navigation system over the past 3 months.
Again and again.
Investigators wonder why the airline didn't fix the problem.
In the case of the IRS of this aircraft, that unit should have been taken out and sent to maintenance for calibration or repairs.
Investigators discover that when pilots complained about a faulty IRS unit, the airline didn't fix it properly. They would either swap it with a unit from another plane, or often they would only do a basic cleaning of the malfunctioning unit.
They just pull up the connectors, spray it with some lubricant cleaners, then put it back on, did some ground test, and then just put ground test OK on the maintenance log.
Since the IRS is such a vital piece of equipment, this is contrary to all recommended repair policies. Investigators listen to the cockpit voice recorder, hoping to discover how the malfunctioning IRS contributed to the crash.
This is crazy. You're going to get lost if it stays like this.
Don't turn it! This is our heading! Pull up! Pull up!
But nothing they hear leads them to believe that an IRS malfunction alone could have caused the plane to crash.
If you have a failure in one system of the airplane, it shouldn't cause an accident.
Investigators now wonder if the severe storm Flight 574 flew into somehow played a role in this crash.
This is messed up. This is really messed up. It's starting to fly like a bamboo ship. Confirm our position.
Weather is a well-known cause of airline accidents. It can wreak havoc with the airplane and disorient pilots. In 1977, a Southern Airways DC-9 flew into a violent storm near New Hope, Georgia.
Our left engine just cut out.
Hail clogged the engines. They tore themselves apart.
Got the other engine going too.
Brace for impact!
The plane slammed into the small town, and 72 people were killed. In order to determine if weather was a factor in the Adamair crash, investigators need a more complete picture of what happened on board the flight. They want to know everything the crew did and said from the time they discovered that they were off course to the time they hit the water. To do this, they combine the data from the two black boxes to create a computer simulation of the flight.
That gives us very close to the possibility of what really happened with the aircraft.
Investigators return to Jakarta to study the simulation.
The weather in Mike Sierras isn't good.
This is crazy! We're going to get lost if it stays like this.
They can see that throughout most of the flight, the computer was navigating the plane. But since the flight computer was sending the plane off course, the captain decided to navigate the plane himself.
Okay, put the IRS in attitude.
Co-pilot Susanto switched the navigation system to a mode that would keep the plane flying straight and level. Captain Widodo could now change his course.
This is where they switch from nav to attitude.
Switching from one mode to the other forces some computerized gauges to temporarily go blank while they reset. One is the ADI, or Artificial Horizon, which tells the crew if the plane is flying level.
ADI goes off and stays off.
There was also another much more serious consequence to the switch.
That's where the plane starts its right roll.
The autopilot disengaged when they consciously selected from the nav mode to the attitude mode, and then the aircraft commenced an almost imperceptible roll to the right of around about 1 degree per second.
The captain missed a crucial step when he switched his flight computer from one mode to the other.
Quick reference handbook, please.
He should have flown his plane straight and level while the computer adjusted to the new setting.
Maintain straight and level, constant airspeed flight until attitude displays recover. Approximately 30 seconds. It's in the manual.
Any pilot who is trained and qualified on the Boeing 737-400 is regarded to have a sufficient knowledge that whenever they switch the nav mode to attitude, they have to maintain wings level for 30 seconds.
But neither of the pilots did that. It's an oversight with grave consequences. Without that step, the autopilot disengages completely. The flight computer did send out a warning when that happened, but the warning was ignored. The crew didn't seem to notice that the autopilot was no longer flying the plane. And it only took seconds for that to become a very serious problem. The data tells investigators that this plane had a natural tendency to roll to the right. Old planes, like old cars, don't always go straight. Throughout the flight, the autopilot compensated for that by raising the aileron on the plane's left wing. An aileron is a movable flap on the wing that controls how much the plane rolls to the left and right. But once the autopilot disengaged, it stopped compensating and the ailerons went back to a neutral position. That allowed the plane to revert to its tendency to roll to the right.
And they don't even notice.
At this point, the plane was rolling at a rate of 1 degree per second. Focused on their faulty navigation system, and with thick clouds obscuring the horizon, the pilots had no idea that their plane was dipping. It's not uncommon for pilots to get disoriented in this way.
Your body will start to fool you. Your senses will start sending you false information or false senses. You might think that you are actually going straight and level, where you're actually rolling slowly to the right or to the left.
The 737 is programmed to issue a warning when it rolls past 35 degrees.
Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle.
The flight data recorder shows investigators that in response to that alert, Captain Widodo did attempt to level the plane.
They get an oral warning from the airplane that says, hey, bank angle, bank angle. And at that point, they made some small inputs to the controls, but they didn't fly the airplane.
Believing that the autopilot would keep the plane level, Widodo soon turned his attention back to the problematic IRS.
When the pilot engrossed with troubleshooting of the IRS, their ability to pay attention for the other tasks is reduced. Further, these IRS anomalies has become the only priority at the moment.
Usually you would say one pilot deals with the system issue, the other pilot flies the airplane. They were both dealing with this system issue and totally focused on the issue, so they never saw what was happening.
This is not the first accident involving what we would call spatial disorientation.
It was almost 3 years earlier to the day that another flight, Flash Airline 604, taking off over the Red Sea, had a similar fate.
See what the aircraft just did?
Distracted by a malfunctioning component in the cockpit, the captain may have become disoriented.
Autopilot! Autopilot!
Like the Adam Air flight, the captain's attention was focused on his flight computer. And like the Adam Air flight, his plane began rolling dangerously to the right. Investigators concluded that without any external references, the captain simply couldn't tell that his plane was falling from the sky.
Tragically, just because there is an inertial reference system failure, or let's say in another accident there might be an engine failure, does not mean that an aircraft has to crash.
It's 60 degrees now and there's no attempt at recovery.
Don't turn it! This is our heading! Pull up! Pull up!
Investigators can see that when Captain Widodo does take action, he makes the situation much worse. With his plane still banked drastically to the right, Captain Widodo should have leveled his wings and then pulled his nose up. He did the opposite. He began pulling back on his control column before his wings were level. That forced the plane into a tight spiral dive.
Basically, it rolled, and it just kept rolling until it almost went inverted and just kind of fell out of the sky once it got to a point where it wasn't flying like a normal airplane should.
The aircraft was descending at nearly 900 kilometres an hour at a vertical speed at times reaching in excess of 21,000 feet per minute.
That's almost the speed of sound, and more than 150 kilometers an hour faster than this plane was designed to withstand.
It's rolling over rapid descent. They can't recover now.
At that speed, the plane is no longer able to hold itself together.
And that sound. That's the sound of the plane coming apart.
The black boxes have revealed how Flight 574 crashed. But they also raise crucial questions.
It's just one error after another.
There was ample opportunity, ample time for the pilots to correct the situation.
The investigators have come to a disturbing conclusion. The only mechanical failure was with the plane's navigation system. And that shouldn't have caused the crash. The more significant failures were human.
Okay, put the IRS in attitude.
But why should qualified pilots make these disastrous mistakes?
Don't turn it! This is a heading!
To find these answers, investigators must look at the airline itself. This one accident will raise serious questions about Indonesia's entire aviation industry. Investigators turned their attention from the actions of the pilots on Flight 574 to the airline that employed them, Adam Air. They meet with the owners.
France Waves.
Adam Air was founded in 2002 by a wealthy businesswoman named Sandra Ang. Ang named the airline after her son, Adam, whom she also appointed as the company's president.
We need to know more about your training program.
The investigators interview Adam Air pilots.
Did the airline provide any training on recovery procedures in the event of an IRS failure? No.
They want to find out more about how the airline trained its flight crews.
What about recovery techniques? IRS troubleshooting? No?
What they uncover is disturbing.
We could not find any evidence that the pilot was properly trained when they have a sudden disengaging autopilot or when they're flying with the IRS failure.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
As they dig deeper, investigators find an airline plagued with safety issues. 11 months before the Adam Air crash, in February 2006, another Adam Air plane, Flight 782, flew off course the same way as Flight 574. That crew was also getting faulty navigation data. But they couldn't even reach controllers on the radio. They couldn't get directions. They were badly lost for 3 hours.
The crew was trying to find where they were. The ATC was trying to find where they were. And they were over the water.
Like Flight 574, they had a malfunctioning IRS. In the end, the plane landed almost 500 kilometers south of where it should have been.
They just continued until they found an island. And they had an airport, and they said, okay, we have to land there, otherwise we don't know where we're going to go. And they landed, and they didn't know exactly where they were until they landed.
6 months after Flight 574, the European Commission banned all Indonesian airlines from flying to Europe.
That sent a very strong message to the whole world that we, the European Union, believe that all Indonesian airlines are unsafe and you should not fly on them.
Then in March 2008, there's another accident involving Adam Air, this time in the city of Batam.
And the airplane slewed off the runway, came to rest on the side. The evacuation was a bit strange. Nose lights were deployed, and that was a final accident. And after that, I think everybody said enough's enough, you know.
People who did care, people who were wanting to shake up the industry, and reform it and improve it were horrified that the situation had been so bad within Adamair and that the authorities had allowed such a situation to continue and deteriorate.
Immediately after the crash in Batam, the Indonesian government suspended and then ultimately revoked Adamair's license to operate. It is also apparent that Adamair isn't the only Indonesian airline with problems.
Prior to the Adamair crash, Indonesia experienced a bad crash about every year to 18 months.
Many of those accidents involved the discount carriers that the government had allowed to thrive. More than 50 such airlines were in operation at the time of the Adamair crash.
The problem, though, was that this expansion occurred in a way that was not properly monitored, not properly regulated by the government. Thousands and thousands of people are being employed to work for airlines when they just don't have the experience to do so and are not being adequately trained, as the investigation report into the Adamair crash demonstrated.
Indonesia's poor safety record forces the government to take steps to improve airline safety throughout the country. It begins rating airlines on safety and grounds those that don't comply. There have been fewer fatal incidents since the reforms. But a year and a half after it was put in place, the European Union's ban on Indonesian airlines was still in effect. Those familiar with Indonesian aviation think the reforms could go even further.
So that we have no more Adamairs, we have no more companies that cut costs too much and gives all these extra risks to the public, because that's not what the public should receive. The public should receive a reliable and safe means of air transportation.
Zurich Airport, November 2001. Crossair Flight 3597 is one of the few planes left to land.
The commander was flying out of Zurich for the last 20 years, so he was really used to this airport.
Crossair 35.
The lone controller in the tower tracks the approach.
Approach runway 28 for you.
I have ground contact. We're continuing on.
Crossair 3597, continue speed reduction to final approach speed.
But for some reason, the crew can't find the runway.
Damn. He said he saw the runway 1.3 miles.
And the flight ends in disaster.
Crossair 3597, this is Zurich Tower. Do you copy? We have a possible emergency and approach.
He collided with a hill, so obviously he was too low.
A terrible mistake sent a passenger jet dangerously off course, killing 24 people. The clues will lead investigators to a trained professional with an astonishing past.
Mayday, Mayday.
Crossair Flight 3597 is cruising at 27,000 feet above Germany. As the autopilot flies the plane, the crew begins reviewing procedures for their landing.
According to the report, the apron and taxiways are wet. Braking action's not specified.
So the friction report is missing?
Indeed.
That usually means they haven't been out to check lately.
Indeed.
It's the last flight of the day on this busy European route. The 660-kilometer journey from Berlin south to Zurich takes only an hour and a half. There are many empty seats on board. a group of 21 passengers never showed up for the flight. Internet entrepreneur Peter Hogenkamp is returning from a business trip in Germany with his partner, Jacqueline Badran.
On that day, we wanted to take the train, but we had to be in Zurich for that opening ceremony of that trade show, so we decided, okay, so we need to go by plane.
I've got to get some sleep.
It had been a very busy day, so we were very tired when we arrived at the airport.
Among the passengers is the girl band Passion Fruit, Germany's answer to the Spice Girls. They're on their way to perform the last show of a concert tour.
I was shocked when suddenly all the passion fruits, all the 3 of them, were coming over, and they were sitting right in front of us.
Just what I needed.
Flight 3597 is an Avro 146 airliner. It's a British-made jet popular with regional airlines like Crossair. Captain Hans-Ulrich Lutz is in command. He's been with the airline for more than 22 years, having served as a pilot and as an instructor.
So, tell me about the runway and the conditions.
Overcast with light snowfall. Visibility 3.
First Officer Stefan Lehrer is a newcomer to the airline. He's had his pilot's license for just a year and a half. He was hired by Crossair right out of flight school.
The passion fruits were being quite noisy. They were excited. I think they went from one gig to the other. So they were still in their stage clothes. I said, oh my God, do I really need this? Can I just sleep?
It's probably okay to move.
We decided to move back a few rows and change the side where we were sitting, so we were in a very quiet area then.
Crossair 3597, clear to flight level 160.
The flight is slightly behind schedule. It's due to land in Zurich in less than half an hour.
According to the latest information, we'll be using runway 14.
What kind of approach?
ILS approach.
Okay.
An ILS, or Instrument Landing System approach, means the pilots will be guided to the runway by radio signals beamed from the airport.
And a decision altitude of 1,602 feet. Call me 100 above minimums.
Okay, I'll call 100 above minimums.
The plane's sophisticated computers will do most of the work getting them down. At Zurich Airport, the weather is getting worse. It's snowing, and visibility is dropping.
Crossair 3191, turn left heading 150.
In the tower, controllers have started a nightly routine. A supervisor sends out a message notifying crews that runway 14 is being taken out of service because of a controversial new law. Planes landing on runway 14 must fly over Germany on their approach. But people in Germany have long complained about the noise.
Because of the political issue, airplanes had to fly over Switzerland in their final descent to the airport of Zurich for noise reasons. There was no other operational or weather reasons whatsoever. It was purely political.
Switzerland has agreed to shut down runway 14 after 10 p.m. to keep landing planes out of German airspace and use runway 28 instead. The crew hasn't received this information yet. But First Officer Lehrer is familiar with the new rule.
Should I ask if it's still runway 14? It's almost 10 o'clock.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's still 14.
Zurich approach, Crossair 3597. Please confirm the approach in use is the ILS 14.
Crossair 3597, you're identified. It will be a VOR DME, approach runway 28 for you.
hell. What next? Okay, fine.
Unlike runway 14 with its sophisticated instrument landing system, runway 28 is not equipped for ILS landings. Instead, it has a less accurate navigational system. It's called VOR-DME. A radio beacon sends information to an aircraft about its distance from the runway and whether it's left or right of it. It provides no guidance on the plane's altitude. Pilots would rather not make VOR approaches because they place a greater workload on the flight crew.
He would always prefer an ILS approach because he gets guidance on the approach slope. And he can also use his autopilot to guide him down literally on ground to the runway.
Because of its less precise technology, runway 28 was rarely used for landings before the new noise law.
Okay then, rebriefing for runway 28. That would be chart 13-2.
Now Captain Lutz abandons the ILS approach he was planning and prepares his first officer for the new non-precision approach.
Are you familiar with the 28 approach?
Yes, I've done it a couple of times.
The crew goes over every detail of how they will approach Zurich Airport.
Prasadingen, Zurich. East 6,000 feet.
There are only a few planes left to land tonight,
3597.
including Flight 3597 and 2 other Crossair flights just ahead of it. As the aircraft approach the runway, controllers need to keep them apart.
Crossair 3597, reduce speed to 180 or less.
Speed 180 or less, Crossair 3597.
Captain Lutz makes the final turn to line his jet up with the runway.
160 knots.
The plane is now in the thick of the heavy weather surrounding Zurich. At the airport, the second-last Crossair flight touches down on runway 28. Now, with only Flight 3597 to land, the supervisor decides to head home early. The controller handling the aircraft is the only controller left in the tower.
Crossair 3597, continue speed reduction to final approach speed.
Zurich Tower, this is Crossair 3891.
She gets a report from the plane that just landed.
Visibility approaching 28 was borderline. We could only see the runway from 1.3 miles out.
But Captain Lutz knows Zurich Airport well. He continues towards the runway.
Gear down.
The plane begins the final stage of its approach.
Cabin crew, prepare for landing.
Captain Lutz begins slowing the jet and puts it into a steep descent.
Six miles is checked.
Yes.
Flaps 3-3.
Flaps 3-3 selected.
Final check.
Final check. Confirm 3 greens.
Is checked. 116 knots.
The descent gets even steeper.
Full flaps. Set.
Checked.
Flight 3597 is about 3 minutes from the runway. Captain Lutz expects it to come into view any second now.
100 above.
Do we have ground contact?
Yes.
Passengers prepare themselves for landing.
We were pretty close to the airport, so you think, okay, this is going smoothly, but it was dark and it was snowing, so we couldn't see anything.
In the tower, the controller monitors the flight to make sure it's lined up with the runway.
Crossair 3597, cleared to land, runway 28.
The minimum.
2-4.
The flight has hit decision height, 2,400 feet above sea level, 1,000 feet above the ground near Zurich.
Decision height is the minimum height you can descend before. You need to decide whether you can see the runway and continue the approach visually, or you have to make a decision to go around.
I have ground contact. We're continuing on.
500. 500.
Captain Lutz still can't see the runway lights, but knows that the flight ahead of him had the same problem.
He said he saw the runway 1.3 miles.
They should almost be on top of the runway by now. But for some reason, they still can't see it.
Make a go around.
Crossair 3597.
The crew decides to abort the landing.
Go around!
Go around.
And pushes the plane to its limits in an effort to get it to climb. Captain Lutz throttles up his plane's 4 jet engines as he aborts his landing at Zurich Airport. But it's too late. There's not enough time for the engines to get to full power and clear a tree-covered hill suddenly looming dead ahead. Residents of a nearby village witness Flight 3597's final moments.
I was walking down with my dog. All of a sudden I saw that aircraft coming from behind the forest, the little hill. And I thought, oh, it's very low and it's not on the same route as aircrafts normally are coming to land at the airport of Zurich.
The jet clips the treetops.
Suddenly, it was shaking very hard. What's happening? Something is wrong.
Moments later, the aircraft plunges into the hillside.
Crossair 3597, this is Zurich Tower. Do you copy? Crossair 3597, this is Zurich Tower. Do you copy?
All of a sudden, the whole sky in the west was getting really orange, like a big fire, like an explosion.
The impact tears the aircraft apart.
The wings broke off and the fuel is in the wings, so the flames really sort of shot inside the plane.
Crossair 3597, this is Zurich Tower. Do you copy? This is Zurich Tower. We have a possible emergency in approach sector east. I repeat, approach sector east.
Crossair Flight 3597 has crashed near the village of Bassersdorf, northeast of Zurich. Some people have survived the accident, including Peter Hogenkamp and Jacqueline Badran.
I don't have any memory of how we really walked out, because the back was cut off and we were just able to walk out there.
One member of Passion Fruit also survives, but her 2 bandmates seated just 1 row ahead of her have been killed.
I thought, you know, when they give you these instructions in the beginning when you get on the plane, how come they never tell you how far you have to run away from a burning plane? Because they never tell you.
Let's get away from here.
So we thought, I don't know, 100 meters?
Within minutes, emergency workers get to the crash site.
Hey! Over here! Over here!
24 of the 33 people on board Flight 3597 are dead, including Captain Lutz, and First Officer Stefan Lehrer. Daniel Knecht, an investigator from Switzerland's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, arrives at the scene.
I got the call from our rescue service about 10:30 in the evening. Half an hour later, I was on the accident site. The rear part of the fuselage was quite intact. It was also the region where most of the survivors step out without injury.
For Peter Hogenkamp and his partner, it appears that moving to the rear of the plane saved their lives.
I think it was just good luck. I think it would have been a whole different story if we wouldn't have changed seats. So the passion fruits may have saved their lives.
While rescuers care for the survivors, Knecht and his team survey the crash site. The location of the wreckage far from the airport is of interest to the investigators.
4 kilometers and 50 meters from the runway.
The aircraft was not where he was intended to be. He collided with a hill east of runway 28, so obviously he was too low. And the first question was, why was this aircraft too low?
The black box flight recorders are found in the wreckage. They're in good condition. Investigators are well aware that this is the worst aviation disaster on Swiss territory in over a decade. They're under pressure to find answers fast. While work continues at the crash, a command post is established nearby. Jean Auvernet heads the Swiss Investigation Bureau. He takes charge of the Crossair file.
The public was very anxious about this crash. The media were raising many questions, so we naturally had to open a more in-depth investigation.
The accident happened at the end of a long day for Captain Lutz, but given his background, investigators must consider other causes.
We knew that the captain was very experienced. He had about 17,000 flight hours during his whole career. Flight instructor, flight examiner, within the company for more than 20 years.
The flight recorders are sent to a lab in Paris to extract their data. At the same time, investigators have begun retrieving fragments of wreckage from the crash site. They look for telltale signs of trouble.
The position of switches is very important. Also, if you have some indication panels, for example, with bulbs in it, you can, after a crash, you can analyze the different wires in the bulbs, and then you can determine which, for example, indications or even warnings were active at the moment of the impact.
An investigator comes across an intriguing piece of wreckage. Oil gauges provide information about the oil flowing to the plane's 4 turbofan engines. Curiously, one of them is installed upside down.
This raised a lot of questions for us and for the media. Everyone wanted to know how you could fly a plane with an instrument installed upside down. It wasn't a very important instrument. You could still read it, even if it was installed upside down.
But if this obvious problem was never fixed, what else could be wrong with the plane?
Obviously, there were maintenance issues here. We looked at how the company was doing the maintenance of the planes.
While this review is being launched, investigators study the plane's engines to determine if they were running at the time of the crash. Soil, tree branches, and other debris lodged inside the engines suggest they were.
We checked them out visually, and we saw that the 4 engines were turning in the moment of the accident.
Authorities need to be sure. They will have to check their findings against data from the flight recorders. In the meantime, the location of the crash suggests something may have tragically misled the crew on their descent towards Zurich Airport. Connect focuses on the flight charts they used to plan their approach.
Is the problem with the approach or is the problem with the aircraft? This kind of question was dominant when we started the investigation.
Are you familiar with the 28 approach?
Yes, I've done it a couple of times.
The approach chart provides pilots with directions to the runway,
Trasadingen, Zurich.
details about radio frequencies, as well as altitudes and speed for various stages of the landing. When investigators study an approach chart like the one the crew used, they make a shocking discovery. The chart does not show the hill that the plane hit.
An approach chart is a very important thing because an indication which is not correct on this approach chart could mislead a crew and so easily make them do something wrong.
So, tell me about the runway and the conditions.
Overcast with light snowfall.
A faulty chart would certainly have been a danger to a crew unfamiliar with Zurich Airport. But Lutz had flown in and out of Zurich countless times. He and his first officer were both based in the city.
The commander was flying out of Zurich, I think, for the last 15 to 20 years. So he was really used to this airport.
Investigators conclude that the approach chart, while faulty, could have tripped up some crews, but not this one. Some definitive news finally arrives. The engine data from the black box confirms the observations at the crash site.
We could see quite easily that the engines worked absolutely normally.
Another potential cause of the accident is eliminated from the list: mechanical failure. Investigators now consider a different possibility.
I was covering the approach west position on the night of the accident.
Could air traffic control have somehow mishandled the plane? Investigators study records from the night of the accident and make a disconcerting find. Zurich Airport's control tower was understaffed at the time of the accident.
He left before his shift ended.
The supervisor in the tower went home early, leaving a lone controller to guide Flight 3597 in for its landing.
She was relatively young, and let's say she didn't have that much experience.
Investigators now study transcripts of conversations between that air traffic controller and the flight crew, looking for signs she made a mistake.
Crossair 3597, you're identified. Crossair 3597.
Speed 180 or less.
Crossair 28 for you.
Crossair 3597. Zurich approach. Crossair 3597.
Cleared to land.
They find no indication the controller gave the crew faulty instructions. But they do come across the radio call by the pilot of the Crossair flight that landed minutes earlier.
Zurich Tower, this is Crossair 3891. Visibility approaching 28 was borderline. We could only see the runway from 1.3 miles out.
That pilot warned of poor conditions on the approach to runway 28.
She had options.
They wonder why the controller didn't shut the runway down. Because of poor visibility, she could have reopened runway 14 in spite of the noise bylaw. This would have allowed the crews to make an instrument approach. But she didn't do that.
Thank you, Crossair 3891. Have a good evening.
It would have been much easier to fly ILS approaches in this kind of weather, regardless of this political issue.
It's suspected that without her supervisor present, the controller lacked the experience to make such an important call.
So it's clear that to make the decision not to allow an approach on runway 28 and instead make it on runway 14 demanded a certain kind of confidence, a certain kind of courage.
However, Captain Lutz also heard the same warning.
28 was borderline. We could only see the runway from 1.3 miles out.
Gear down.
He kept going in spite of it. Investigators are now certain that the controller was in no way responsible.
A pilot can always say no. He can always reject the clearance. If he thinks that landing is probably not possible, he is free to reject an approach clearance and ask for a different one.
Jean Auvernet can't understand why Captain Lutz didn't do exactly that. He should have known that he didn't have to make a non-precision approach in bad weather.
When we saw the mistake the pilot had made, we immediately asked ourselves, well, how's it possible? Because for an experienced pilot who is an instructor, this was a really basic mistake.
Auvernet is beginning to wonder if something in Lutz's long career is hiding clues about his behavior on the night of the accident. One by one, investigators are ruling out the possible causes of the crash of Crossair Flight 3597. They hope the answer lies in the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, of the doomed jet. After waiting many days for its data to be sent back from France, they now pore over it carefully, listening for any clues that might explain why the plane was flying so close to the ground, so far from the airport.
ILNAV is engaged.
Authorities get more than they expected. Not only is the CVR complete, but Captain Lutz offers a running commentary on everything he does.
And on inbound track 275. Speed is checked, flaps 18.
It's practically a roadmap to understanding what went on in the cockpit.
That's not usual that the pilot flying is talking so much about what he is doing or what he is seeing. And for the investigation, this helped a lot.
100 above.
Do we have ground contact?
Yes. Investigators learned that the crew of Flight 3597 was looking for the runway and believed it would soon come into view.
From the CVR, we saw that the commander and also his co-pilot were not feeling some fear or feeling that something was not going as they planned.
But what they didn't know was that the plane was actually 4 miles shy of its target.
Damn. He said he saw the runway 1.3 miles.
300.
Captain Lutz obviously thought his jet was closer to the runway than it was. Investigators consider the possibility he was misled by his distance measuring equipment, or DME. It's supposed to tell pilots how far they are from the airport.
The DME indication would have given this distance, and then he would have detected immediately that he was below the approach pass.
Perhaps the DME from Flight 3597 was faulty. It's been recovered from the wreckage, but it's impossible to tell what information it gave the pilots. However, there is another way to check whether the instrument was functioning or not.
The DME distance is not recorded on the FDR, but on 2 occasions the pilots mentioned the distance.
6 miles is checked.
Yes. But was Captain Lutz really 6 miles out from the runway when he made that report? Investigators compare the time Lutz checked his DME with radar data on the aircraft's location at that exact same time. They can see that when Lutz's instruments were telling him he was 6 miles out, that's precisely where he was.
So we knew that the pilots had an indication for the distance available at that time.
An instrument problem can now be crossed off the list as a factor in the crash, which only heightens the mystery.
I have ground contact. We're continuing on.
If the instrument was working, why did Lutz think he was closer to the runway than he actually was? The answer lies not in what investigators hear on the cockpit voice recorder, but what they don't hear.
I don't see anything after 6 miles.
Do we have ground contact?
Neither pilot read out a DME check after the 6-mile reading.
Yes.
It tells investigators that Lutz wasn't monitoring his vital instrument during the final minutes of his approach. Instead, he was preoccupied with spotting the lights of the runway. That's not what pilots are supposed to do.
The pilot flying is supposed to keep his eyes on the instruments because all the information he needs is there. He only switches to flying by sight when the non-flying pilot says, "Runway in sight." Only then can the captain take his eyes off the instruments and fly by sight because the landing is performed visually.
À vue. Parce que l'atterrissage en tant que tel se fait à vue.
If Lutz had checked his instruments, he would have known how far from the runway he actually was. But how had he ended up such a long distance from it?
400. Confirm 3 greens.
400.
Is checked.
116 knots.
Further analysis of the black box data reveals that Lutz put his plane into a steep descent as it began its final approach to Zurich Airport. But it's readily apparent his approach profile was out of sync with the trajectory laid out in his chart. The approach profile for runway 28 calls for pilots to make a gradual and steady descent, which would bring them to 2,400 feet after they've cleared the hills around Zurich. Then pilots have to level off until they spot the runway. When investigators compare the approach Lutz made with the approach profile he was supposed to follow, they find that his overly steep descent brought him to 2,400 feet well before he cleared the hills. Then he continued to descend until he hit the ground. It's beginning to look like Lutz had violated one of the cardinal rules of flying. Aircraft making non-precision approaches are supposed to level off at minimum descent altitude or safe height until they have the runway in view. This safe height is intended to keep the aircraft above any potential hazards.
It's really a basic error. Every pilot is trained to respect such minimums. Not only with VOR DME approaches, but also with ILS approaches.
But Captain Lutz kept his aircraft in a steep descent without even pausing at 2,400 feet. The logical next question for investigators, could he see the runway or not?
I have ground contact. We're continuing on.
What does he mean by ground contact?
They need to know if it was even possible for Lutz to see the runway when he reported ground contact. They retrace his steps in a simulator programmed with the weather he was facing that night.
6 miles from runway, altitude 3,300 feet. 4.8 miles, 2,400 feet. Still no runway in sight.
No, il ne pouvait pas.
No, he couldn't see the runway because there was a hill between him and the runway, and at that altitude, there's no way he could see it.
À l'altitude de laquelle il était, voir la piste.
The conclusion, Captain Lutz had clearly violated his minimum descent altitude.
Whether there is flat terrain or hills, minimums are set accordingly, and in no way you can just bust the minimums, whether there's hills or not.
This discovery raises questions not just about Lutz's actions, but his young first officers as well.
2-4, the minimum.
2-4.
We're continuing on.
A first officer should not let his captain breach minimum descent altitudes.
Il aurait pu intervenir.
The co-pilot could have said, "No, stop. We can't see the runway. We're not descending."
On voit pas la piste, on descend pas.
He considered his captain an old pilot with a lot of experience, not making any mistakes. Most probably he was trusting him too much. And also by being submissive, maybe he wouldn't speak up on time, just to keep harmony in the cockpit.
There were no mechanical failures or instrument problems with the plane. Nor was the air traffic controller negligent in any way. But it is now clear that Captain Lutz made a series of catastrophic piloting errors that doomed Flight 3597 and claimed the lives of 24 people. Investigators dig deeper into Captain Hans-Ulrich Lutz's flying record to see if there's anything in his long background that could explain why he crashed Flight 3597. What they discover is truly alarming. Lutz applied to flight school when he was 17 years old. He was rejected 3 times because of his lack of education. He finally got his license at the age of 20, but continually failed exams to upgrade due to his inadequate comprehension of navigation systems. Captain Lutz may have had a long career, but it was not a stellar one.
Years of flying and flying hours don't say anything about competence.
For some reason, though, his record as a below-average pilot didn't prevent Crossair from hiring him in 1979.
There was a red line through his career where several incidents happened before and he had missed several checks. Well, he had some limits, but what's hard to understand for me is that they were identified and decision was made to keep him flying.
Captain Lutz's limited abilities continued in his new job. While commanding a sightseeing tour of the Swiss Alps, he made a navigation error and ended up in Italy. He only realized his mistake when his passengers spotted road signs in Italian. In another incident, he wrecked a $1.5 million aircraft after inadvertently retracting the landing gear while the plane was still on the tarmac. Lutz's failures forced Crossair to fire him as an instructor, but they allowed him to continue flying passenger planes.
I personally do pilot assessments, and he would never have gone through my assessment with a positive recommendation.
Okay, approach course 13.
Investigators wonder why Crossair allowed Lutz to stay on as a pilot if he was not entirely competent. The answer appears to be they may have had little choice. Investigators' first glimpse into the problems at Crossair came after they found the upside-down gauge at the crash site.
We had to check if the employees had received the proper training, if they had the qualifications required for this kind of work.
No glaring maintenance issues were found, but a closer look at Crossair's hiring practices explains why Captain Lutz was allowed to keep flying. The airline may have grown too fast throughout the 80s and 90s.
La compagnie, elle s'est agrandie très rapidement.
The company expanded very rapidly, and with that success, it's clear that you have to quickly increase the staff. Office workers, mechanics, that's one thing, but pilots, you have to go out and find them.
Mais les pilotes, tu devais les trouver.
In those days, they were desperate for pilots, and somehow no decision was made to lay him off because of his questionable performance during his career.
Captain Lutz's failings caught up with him on November the 24th, 2001.
Make it go around. Go around!
24 people paid with their lives. After the accident report was issued, sweeping changes were made. Swiss aviation authorities had Crossair increase the number of employees overseeing pilots. They also scrutinized other airlines to determine if there were other substandard performers like Lutz.
One thing is for sure that the selection process has improved considerably. And of course, awareness of people's performance during their career was increased considerably.
Crossair went out of existence in 2002. It was folded into the Swiss national carrier.
As Crossair became Swiss, they adopted the previous Swissair selection process. And I can say today, which is already 9 years since, that safety has improved considerably, and also quality of the pilots that are hired by companies like Swiss.
Since the crash of Flight 3597, Zurich's runway 28 has been upgraded with both an instrument landing system and an automatic warning that alerts controllers when a plane's approach is too low. There has never been another accident involving that runway. But the Crossair tragedy and the circumstances that spawned it isn't an isolated case. Regional airlines have boomed worldwide since the 1980s, particularly in the United States, where they account for half of all flights and carry 100 million passengers a year. In the rush to fulfill consumer demand for cheap air travel, these airlines often hire less experienced pilots and pay them far lower salaries than their counterparts at major carriers. Some even neglect to test their pilots for basic skills.
There is no such thing as a compulsory pilot assessment before they get hired. Does not exist.
Colgan Air, in February of 2009, one of its planes crashed in Buffalo, New York, killing 50 people. The accident was blamed on the actions of an inexperienced crew. An eerie reminder of the Crossair disaster, it underlined the urgency of improving oversight of smaller carriers.
If you're making a product for a large company and you make a mistake, you may lose part of the market. You may lose some clients. But an airline company can lose a plane, its crew, and passengers. The stakes are very different.
Naturellement, a des causes un peu différentes.